come in. Good morning. We will call to order the October 14, 2014 meeting of the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners. At this point, I'd like to invite up Deputy Teddy Floyd from the Indian River County Sheriff's Department, who will lead us in the invocation, and then followed by that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please rise and join us? Teddy, welcome.
Welcome. I'm here. Let us bow our heads. Father, we thank you. We thank you for our great commission. I thank you for the sheriff's office. I thank you for the sheriff. We ask that you bless each and every city official, their families. And God, we want to give a special prayer for Mike Redstone, who lost his father last week, Father. We ask that you protect him, guide him, keep him out of harm's way. Anything that we can do, Father, to further enhance your word, to win souls for you, we will, God. And we'll be ever so careful to give you the praise. Let us say amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Teddy. Under additions or deletions to the agenda, I'd like to add two things. One, I'd like to add under My Matters a discussion to set a date for the vote on the Oslo ramp. The original motion reflected that either we would bring that vote back on the 21st or at a special call meeting. And so I'd just like us to have a discussion to where we can get the calendars organized and select a date and then be ready for that and clear that up. And then the second item, I had a request to speak from Honey Minus. The City Vero Beach Rail Commission had a meeting yesterday afternoon, and she'd like to provide an update on the meeting and the Train Impact Coalition. So any other changes to the agenda?
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Flesher. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Takes us to proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation designating October 17th, 2014 as Ernheim-Chester Research and Awareness Day in Indian River County. Is Miss Livings here? Cindy, why don't you come on up, and anybody else there with you? Miss Livings will be receiving this proclamation on behalf of Mrs. Kathy Brewer, and she is with the Ernheim-Chester Disease Global Alliance.
Yes.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
You're quite welcome. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and if
Please.
you'd like to say a few words, that'd be great, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. This is a proclamation designating October 17, 2014 as Ernheim-Chester Research and Awareness Day in Indian River County, Florida. Whereas Ernheim-Chester disease is a super rare cancer-like disease that can attack and destroy any organ of the body, and whereas very few citizens, including the medical community, have ever heard of Ernheim-Chester disease, and whereas renowned medical scientists around the world are researching the cause of and effective treatment protocols for Ernheim-Chester disease, and whereas our county has been hard hit by Ernheim-Chester disease, and whereas our citizens have proven time and again their concern for the welfare and health of their neighbors, and whereas awareness of Ernheim-Chester disease and the need for continued research must be done. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board does hereby designate October 17, 2014 as Ernheim-Chester Research and Awareness Day in Indian River County, Florida. Adopted this 14th day of October, 2014, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Cindy, why don't you tell us a little bit more about this?
About the disease itself?
Right.
It's an extremely rare disease. It was named after 2 physicians, one who is Austrian and one that's American. They first designated, recognized it in patients back in the 1930s as this strange thing, so it kind of got named after them, kind of like Alzheimer or Parkinson. I think something like 500 people across the world have been diagnosed since the 1930s, so it's quite rare. Michael and Mike, we met in San Diego actually in October, about this time last year, exactly. And Anna and I met. She's taking care of her son Michael, and we were like chatting, like, where are you from, blah 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 blah, and she mentioned that she was related to some people in Vero. I'm like, get out of town, like everybody knows somebody from here, but turns to find out her nephews coach on Billy Living's field. And I'm like, you mean the same Ray Halls that teach at the same school that I teach at and coach on my father-in-law's football field? This is crazy small. And then we've since learned that there's another man in Indian River County who's also been diagnosed. So 3 people in the state of, 5 I think in the state of Florida, 3 are in Vero Beach. So it's not contagious, it's not Ebola, okay, you don't need to start wearing masks or not drinking water, wearing hazmat suits. And I don't mean to make light of that because that's a very serious thing. But it's probably going to wind up being diagnosed as a blood cancer in the myeloma, leukemia kind of thing. But scientists and researchers have done a tremendous amount of work just in the last 2 years. I know when Mike was diagnosed in 2009, the life expectancy at that time was 3 years. And there was like this much on the internet you could find out about it. Since Kathy Brewer started this organization and went knocking door to door, researchers' doors, they're now doing research at MD Anderson, at the National Institutes of Health. They're doing research at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York City, several places, a couple of in Israel, in France, and in Italy, and they're all working together. I've never seen a medical community, and I'm a nurse, so I've never seen doctors this open and sharing with coming together to solve a problem. They're identifying the cause, they're identifying appropriate treatments so that the life expectancy is no more just 3 years. It's a question mark. It's open-ended at least. So one of the things that we want to get out about the disease is that it's very underdiagnosed. Probably many more people actually have it, but they're misdiagnosed 3 or 4 times. Very common with everybody who's had it. Once they get diagnosed, they've been diagnosed with all these other rare things first, and they weren't correct. And get people to know about it, and also to raise money for research. What we're hoping to earmark money for here is a patient registry and a tissue bank so that researchers all over the world will have access to these handful of patients and their tissues so that independent research can go on, because research can't be done on 3 people. 5 people. It's not meaningful. It's not significant. So that's kind of what we're hoping to raise awareness for and raise funds for. And we thank you so much for your help.
Do you have an activity going on the 17th or anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, the football game on Friday night.
Okay.
It's being broadcast on Fox Sports. I'm still not sure, Brian, do you know, because I haven't gotten from Lenny yet, how people can watch it if they're not at the game?
Yeah, it'll be on Fox Sports South, so it'll be statewide. Anybody who has cable can watch it throughout the state, and I think they're trying to get a national and international internet feed.
So they can
get
stream
on Fox,
it?
yeah, so a live stream via Fox Sports.
So we'll be doing, the guys are going to be doing the coin toss at the game. We're going to have some girls like this that are going to be in their uniforms and little trick-or-treat bags where we're going to be scaring up a cure, collecting funds. So just, again, the patients, students and fans as they come into the game will get a card, identification card, explaining what ECD is, kind of introducing them to Mike and Michael and the need for $1, $5, $5,000, whatever they happen to have in their pocket.
Great. So just another great reason to go watch Fighting Indians football, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and help solve, cure disease, stuff we do all the time.
Well, good. And best wishes to both the Mikes. I know the Livings personally, and I know this has been a long struggle for your family, and I think you're right. Just the getting it accurately diagnosed was such a struggle, and then
it's about 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah, and it's
I think
just
the same for y'all.
Yeah, like a year and a half.
Yeah,
it's just a terrible process to have to go through, trying to find out what it really is the cause of the illness. So best wishes to both of you for a full and complete recovery. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Yes. Whenever
gentlemen.
Miss Livings called me on this, I obviously I didn't know anything about the disease, but anytime Miss Living says do something, it's simple.
That would be the other Miss
That's
Living,
right.
so it wasn't
yeah.
me. Yeah.
And of course,
I don't
her
have that
husband.
much clout.
Anytime Coach Living said do something, it was yes, sir.
Yes.
That's right. And
Yes.
so,
The
but
legacy lives on, doesn't
without
it,
a
Wesley?
doubt, without a doubt, and you know, what a tremendous legacy for this to be too. You know, we do. And I don't mean to take away from it, but we do a lot of proclamating up here. We do a whole lot of things like this, and sometimes it, I don't want to say weakens, but sometimes it really does. But to the awareness of this is one that you never know how many lives in Indian River County in the future will be positively affected by this, because now at least simply there's, like you said, there's something on the internet, and so. You know, and for those of you that may not know, Miss Livings, she does the HOSA, at which basically you see these are student nurses behind us that quite possibly they'll have the opportunity to be in a doctor's office one day, recognize something, and be able to at least tell the doctor or the doctors themselves. I'm not taking away from anybody on that.
Yeah.
But you know, say, hey, I saw this before.
Yeah. That's how most of us were diagnosed. Like,
Yeah.
he happened to be seen by a doctor who the radiologist, like, wait a minute, I've just read something about this, you
Right.
know, and just interesting things. Just another little aside. It's just kind of like a woo. October 17th is the 3-year anniversary that Coach Livings died.
Wow.
So in a way,
Gives
he's
you
kind of,
goosebumps.
I know, he's
Yeah.
kind of here with us, right? It's kind of neat.
Yeah. Well, we love you guys.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
You know,
Commissioner Fletcher?
you said earlier you don't have that much clout. Look what's happening.
Yes, this is true.
Look at the awareness. Look at the element that you've brought forward. Unfortunately, you had to, but
Yeah.
look what's happening here, and watch what's going to happen soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
behalf of
Come on up and
Global
get a
Alliance.
picture.
Thank you.
Probably easier up front with
Get
so
everybody.
many of you.
You want to go, girls? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I still remember you as an FFA president. We still take good care of your house.
Good, good. We drive by once in a while, take a look, yeah. Hey, how are you on? Being at work. Okay, great.
I know that. Anybody that shouldn't even question that.
Absolutely.
I'll have to shift back to screen here.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Bob. And thanks about you, but you.
We're working on it.
Nice to see you.
Good, how you doing? Good to see you. Things going good there?
Good, very good.
Very good.
It's going well.
Okay.
Probably we need to squeeze a little to the left.
Yeah.
Let's slow it down.
Shift.
Okay.
You know what, Cindy? Is there a website that you want to give if somebody wants to just say, hey, to go to?
BCC Global Alliance.
ECDGlobalAlliance.com. All right, thanks.
It has all kinds of ways. It has videos, and it has information, it has ways you can donate.
Good.
Yeah, there's all kinds of
Super.
information there.
All right.
Wonderful.
Great.
Good, thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Have a great time Friday night. Go Indians.
Isn't that the truth?
As long as they're not playing the Sharks.
Oh.
I'm sorry, a little on the blue end.
I'll carry it again.
And that was ECDGlobalAlliance.com. Is that correct? Okay, so ECD Global Alliance. Next is a presentation of a proclamation designating the month of October 2014 as National Arts and Humanities Month. And this will be presented by Commissioner Slaughter and Barbara Hoffman, the chairman of the board of directors of the Cultural Council of Indian River County, will be receiving it. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, and thank you very much.
Commissioner Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning.
I'm very happy this morning to read this proclamation designating the month of October 2014 as National Arts and Humanities Month. Whereas the month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for more than 2 decades. And whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind. And whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country. And whereas the cultural arts industry also strengthens our local economy by producing $346 million in goods and services, $3.6 million in Florida sales tax, $500,000 in Indian River County sales tax, and $11.8 million in Indian River County property tax in total economic activity annually, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 1,769 jobs earning $59 million. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the month of October 2014 be designated as National Arts and Humanities Month in Indian River County, and call upon our citizens to celebrate and promote the arts and culture in our nation, and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in their towns and cities. Adopted this 14th day of October 2014 and signed by all 5 members of the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I want to thank you for proclaiming the month of October 2014 as National Arts and Humanities Month. The arts are an important policy asset and prosperity generator for our country. In addition to their inherent value to society, the arts offer a distinctive blend of benefits. As economic drivers, the arts create jobs and produce tax revenue. A strong arts sector is an economic asset that stimulates business activity, attracts tourist revenues, and retains a high-quality workforce. The arts have been shown to be a successful and sustainable strategy for revitalizing rural areas, inner cities, and populations struggling with poverty. As educational assets, the arts cultivate young imaginations and facilitate success in schools, enhancing students' academic achievement in multiple subject areas. They provide the critical thinking, communication, and innovation skills essential to a productive 21st century workforce. In health and wellness, the arts foster physical, mental, and emotional health, aiding recovery processes and contributing to well-being. The arts can be effective tools for achieving and maintaining wellness for aging adults and people suffering from trauma, including military combat personnel and veterans. As civic catalysts, the arts create a welcoming sense of place and a desirable quality of life. The arts also support a strong democracy, engaging citizens in civic discourse, providing forums for important issues, and encouraging collective problem solving. And as cultural legacies, the arts preserve culture and heritage, passing along a community's unique character and traditions to future generations of citizens. To demonstrate the abundance of arts and culture in our community, you only have to look at the fresh off the press 2014-2015 Cultural Arts and Cultural Guide. We want to thank our 70 advertisers who helped to produce this beautiful book, and we also want to thank the TDC for its help in the production. Our online calendar, which is updated daily with new information, lists events by day, week, and month. Together, these calendars are the most comprehensive in Indian River County. We have delivered, thanks to Joe Baird, a box of the guides for you to share with the community, and they're out at the front reception desk. By investing in the arts, we plant seeds for the future and make our communities better places to live. Locally as well as nationally, the arts mean business. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, gentlemen?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm looking through here and all the things, the next year, some of these things are just fascinating. I see we have General David Petraeus coming in to speak, and that's just one of the many. I'm thumbing through all these. And, to have a community our size this rich with this type of culture is I think it's really a testament, in my opinion, to you and your organization and bringing everybody together. It's always kind of been there, but to bring it to one focal point, and so it's in a user-friendly format for those whenever to either come into the community or while they're here visiting to enhance their stay, and not to dismiss the jobs. I mean, I just thumbing through there and I saw the theater go around, and that was one of the jobs that my son worked at while he was going through high school. He'd go down there and run the lights, and then in the intermission, bust tables. And those kind of skills are skills that you really, it's hard to teach that until you just get out there and start doing it. And that just, I noticed that you mentioned and harped on the job aspects of it, and you're exactly right. And keep up the good work.
Thank you.
You know, Commissioner Davis, I look through here and all I see is celebrity auctioneer Wesley Davis. Listed quite a bit.
That's true. There's one coming up this Saturday.
This is your work.
Yeah, there you go.
Commissioner Fleischer.
Yeah, and Barbara, again, it was intended to be all about the arts, but I want you to know that this book is, and I think everybody should grab a book on the way out. They're right outside. With the advent of this, when we could just press a button and find out, sometimes we don't look at the immediacy of being able to just pick up a one-stop shop guide. And I remember that when the Yellow Pages came out and when the phone book came out, which is dwindling very quickly with the advent of these, that people want a guide. And I'll tell you what, if you're planning an event, if you don't look at this, you might be in for a planned disaster because you don't want to schedule it with something that's in here that's going to be a big draw. So this is a very valuable tool. I often commented about the calendars that you put out, but this book, this is it. So thank you.
Thank you. We have added a section in the back. The last 12 or 15 pages are actually a calendar for those who are planning events. It doesn't include everything, but it includes the main things that you would be looking for if you were trying to plan an event and didn't want to be in competition with some of the others.
Thank you for all the hard work that you put into this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much.
That concludes the proclamations and presentations. Next is the approval of the minutes of September 16, 2014, final budget hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Under informational items, I'd just like to bring up to the audience that tomorrow, October 15th, from 10 o'clock till 2 in the afternoon, is a Fall 2014 Job Fest. This will be held out at the Indian River County Fairgrounds. It is free and open to the public. I believe they said they have about over 60 employers that have, part of the requirement is you have to have actual job openings to be an employer to participate. So they have over 60 employers with job openings that will be at the Job Fest. It is free and open to the public. So if you or if you know of anyone looking for work, this is a great opportunity to go out there and meet some employers that are hiring. With that, we move on to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, anything on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you said.
Chairman O'Brien, we may want to announce, the sheriff just told me that they don't need to have the 11 o'clock meeting.
Okay. Oh, that's great. I'll get to that in just a minute. Okay. Anything on consent, gentlemen?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second from Commissioner Davis. Is there anyone in the audience or the public that would wish to have a consent agenda item pulled for additional discussion? Anyone from the public for a consent agenda item? Seeing none, on motion by Commissioner Fleischer, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. Under constitutional items, we did have an item for a time certain with the sheriff. It's my understanding now that we do not need to schedule that time certain, so we will take care of that. And then, gentlemen, just before we start the public hearing, as the impact fees might take a little bit of time, is there any consensus? I'd see the three speakers that want to speak are here. Would you all be willing to move the public speaking up first so they can speak before they
absolutely
have to listen through a long impact fee? Stan, sorry about that, but I think If we let everybody speak real quick, we'll get through with that and then get to the public hearing. So with that, we're going to move to the public discussion items. And first is a request to speak from Patricia Hunt regarding a request for evening meetings once a month, Public Record Statute 119.07, and a sign to be posted on the street of the county buildings regarding designated parking. Good morning and welcome, Ms. Hunt.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Patricia Hunt, and for my own security, my address is Roseland, Florida, and that's all I'm going to divulge at this time. But I wanted to thank each and every one of you for letting me speak and continuing to let me speak. I do want to update you. I was at the Vero Beach City Council meeting, and just to give you a quick update, I'm sure they're going to contact you if they haven't already. It was a very good meeting. The city officials were excellent, and a lot of people who came and presented the stuff about the train, and they want to work with the county, and I suggested even a task force with the state, city officials, county officials, Treasure Coast, Sheriff's Department, medical officials, because you've had CEOs from Jupiter Medical Center and different other agencies, including Maritime Law, Coast Guard, who have actually asked to put together a study. So I just wanted to give you guys a quick update on that to let you know that the city is very much wanting to work with the county on this issue,
okay,
and with on a state level. So with that being said, I am here today basically to request a once-a-month meeting. City of Vero Beach does this. I think it's a great idea. They've implemented it and had it for years, and a lot of people are here today. But there's a lot of working class people that work during the day. And I know you have had one meeting having to do with, I think it was the Second Amendment or medical marijuana, and I couldn't attend that. I was out of state attending a funeral. I have talked to a city official, Mr. O'Connor, and yesterday, because he had the train meeting, apparently this area is basically owned by the city. And while I was here at the September 9th meeting, I got a ticket on my car. So I am going to address that with him before I bring this publicly to you with some suggestions, because there's no yellow line on the highway, there's no street sign on the highway, and transportation thought this was a parking lot out front here. They did not know it was actually a state-owned highway. So I've addressed that, and out of courtesy to Mr. O'Connor, I've spoken with him yesterday. He had a lot on his plate. I'm going to speak with him first and then come back and address that if that's okay with you guys. Sure. And to wrap this up very quickly, I have made several public records requests in writing and made phone calls to the Sheriff's Department. I am asking now publicly for those public requests, specifically for March 27th video surveillance tape inside the courthouse, which those cameras are to be running and working at all times. I have put this in writing. I have sent from, while I was out of state, I had a lot on my plate, and due to the stress of this lawsuit and this accident case that has been dragged on for years that the county had never had any jurisdiction over, and certain information was withheld from the state, there are now state officials involved, and to the point where I'm done, gentlemen, playing games. I'm done with the nonsense and delays, and FDLE had done an investigation on the Sheriff's Department, and my issue is not with the Sheriff's Department, but I met with the Sheriff when he was here at the Red Shoes event. I ran outside the building and asked for 5 minutes of his time. I asked him for I asked him for public records, and he said, get right on it. Well, that was a month ago. And I have asked for public records specifically for March 27th with those video cameras inside the county courthouse for over a year now. And I'm going to continue to ask, and I will send something up to the governor's office if need be. And Mr. Harperin, his attorney, has been evasive and uncooperative. So I didn't come here to expose or literally attack the Sheriff's Department. There are some very good police officers who do their job and do it right. However, this is something that has gotten out of control, and it's to the point where it's going to stop. And I've asked for these requests, I've put it in writing, I've made phone calls, I've left messages, and I'm just getting the runaround. This is a Florida statute 11907 and 01, and there is a federal statute 5 U.S. 522. And I'm well aware of now that there's a federal lawsuit that has been filed down in Fort Pierce. I don't know the whole gist of the lawsuit, and I'd also like to know, and I think the county has a right to know, how many lawsuits are pending in this county against the Sheriff's Department. So, again, my issue is not to attack the Sheriff's Department, but when I have had to go over a year for public records request and continuing to get excuses and delays, and also have had to deal with the clerk of court's attorney who's been evasive, I'm back in town, and I'm not leaving. And this county had no jurisdiction, and the fact that continued certain public officials and state officials are basically interfering now is to the point where I didn't ask to come here to do this. I lived here for over 15 years peacefully with a clean record without a falsified trespassing during a court case that was pending both in federal and state court. And the issue was with specific deputies who went above and beyond abusing their power and falsifying documents. And in 2013, and this is public record, that the Sheriff's Department was investigated by the Florida law enforcement for specific accusations and found guilty of. And in the state attorney's office apparently had cleared them of those charges. Now, I don't know the whole ins and outs of the investigation. I'm still waiting to hear from FDLE and their investigator. But all I want is the video surveillance tapes inside that courthouse. I already have witnesses, and one is an AV. They are not about to come forward until I get those tapes. And I'm not going to put any other witnesses in being threatened or harassed or illegally pulled over with no lights. It's to the point where I came here to live peacefully, and now they've overstepped their boundaries. And the fact that I had to bury a family member recently because of the stress of this is absolutely ridiculous. And for a clerk manager to think this is funny and exposing public a death certificate with violating HIPAA laws and violating Privacy Act, Social Security, these are federal laws. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not trying to be. I was representing myself in between attorneys when an attorney was disbarred by the higher court. And, I have never had to go through any kind of nonsense like this before. All people, myself and other people, want is their fair day in court. And this county, and what I've had to deal with, has been far from it. So this is in a higher court right now, and I'm done playing games. This is to the point where it's cost somebody now their life. So I'm asking the sheriff publicly, in front of all these witnesses, that I am asking for those public records. And I've asked in writing, and I'm asking for those public video surveillance tapes that, according to other counties and security I have talked to, that those cameras are to be working at all times to protect the judges first and the public second. And if they're not working, they're supposed to be fixed immediately. So I'm done with the excuses. I'm done with the games. I'm done with the delays. I want answers, and I want the evidence, and I want it within the next 5 days. Okay. And the sheriff I have no problem with bringing him here on Tuesday with his attorney next Tuesday at the committee meeting, and he can come here and speak. But the information I have just said to you about the FDLE is all public record. Okay. And there's a good thing about the internet, and there can be bad things. But at this point, the fact that I've had to bury a family member because of this stress, I didn't ask to get involved with the Sheriff's Department. But I will not be harassed anymore. And this is public now. Okay. And I am going to request a copy of this CD. And this is going to a higher court if this continues. So okay. All I want is the evidence and the officers that were involved, and to be left alone.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Thank you.
In addition to the CD, Ms. Hunt, these will also be, you can click on them and watch the entire video online.
Great.
So both of those you can email them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunt. Next is a request to speak from Fred Mensing regarding bringing forward frauds of Indian River County. Good morning and welcome, Mr. Mensing.
Before I start, could I get you to give me the date of that job fair?
It's tomorrow, Wednesday, October 15th.
Okay.
From 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock.
I got the rest of it. I missed the date.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
All right. The reason I am here is we've been battling since 2008 over several events that this county commission did. And the first one I don't think is very clear to the county commissioners, and I'm going to do a little analogy. Let us assume that each of you owns a ABC automobile. It's 3 years old and you take it in for a noisy wheel bearing and the dealer fixes it, and 10 miles down the road the wheel falls off. You can't control the car, it hits a telephone pole. Who do you expect to take and stand responsible for the damage to your car? I believe you'd be expecting the car dealer. But we have a case here where your attorney, who some people refer to as the dictator of Indian River County, William Collins, sent a fax, which I didn't learn of until 2013, to Bank of America, which was a stumbling block in getting a reverse mortgage because of it. There was a court settlement which he violated when he sent the fax. He neither went to you, his employers, or to Judge Hawley, who reserved jurisdiction over the suit in question, to get permission. He just did it. And as I say, when I learned of it, I gave a copy of that was furnished to me anonymously by somebody at Bank of America, page 1, and they asked Mr. Plakowitz, can you get the rest of this fax together? A couple of weeks later, I get a call. He lost the copy I gave him. So I brought a copy and gave it to Bill DeBrawl and had him time, date, and sign a copy to me that you received it. I want the rest of the fax. I haven't seen it. Finally, you hire an attorney whose reputation exceeds anything that I can imagine for an attorney. Within a brief period of time, I get 11 or 12 pages of a mystery fax that Will Collins sent in February of 2008 to Bank of America, which scuttled a reverse mortgage. Then Mr. Carey and Mr. Collins cook up Resolution 2008-043. The proof of that is that the handwriting on all the illustrations and exhibits are Mr. Carey's. And you people, in spite of a competent attorney talking to you twice, we'll go along with Will Collins, we'll pass it. In 2003, you paid me $5,000 for 600 feet of that strip of land. And you steal this one, which holds 33% of a concrete block building that predates 1965, and my septic system. And you think it's a joke. So we tried dealing with you one way and another, and we've got basically a consensus of 2 to 3 not to settle. All I want as a settlement is to be financially in the position I would have been in 2008, and you have denied that. Where the virtue of losing the property, it could happen within hours at this point. Depends on what Judge Cox decides to do. About $120,000, you can pick up the judgment and avoid that. If you don't spend it and I lose the property, you are now, and you've been on notice through your attorney, there will be a federal lawsuit filed against the state of Florida, against Indian River County, against Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Zork, and Mr. Solari, Mr. Plakowitz, and Mr. Collins. Each suit will be individual. Each suit will ask for $20 million. The blood of my wife is on your hands because her Indian education and bringing up the Trail of Tears, white men lie, lie, lie. In her opinion, when she signed that agreement in 2003, she said, you will lie about it and do whatever you want down the road. So you and the public are on notice. You can do something correct, or you can suffer the legal consequences. And believe me, I cannot enjoy any money that I might recover from any of you if I am sitting in jail for some illegal act against you. It is not going to happen, I assure you. I want you to suffer the way my wife suffered in the last 2 weeks of her life. She was in total remission. And a little flare-up in paperwork from the court apparently is what caused her cancer to come back and kill her. And I tell you, very seriously, you can pull her will up. She specifically excluded the right to sue Joe Fletcher because he came and explained exactly how he felt about things. She didn't hit Wesley Davis because she wasn't quite certain, and Wesley never talked to her face to face. The rest of you decided to stick an arrow in her and say, this is just tough. Menacing some little guy with no money, the heck with him, Kerry's a millionaire, and we don't want to fight him. I consider it a conspiracy. I actually have asked the governor to remove the three of you. I'm sure you're aware of that. The governor's office has responded to me. They will respond to the lawsuit when it is served upon them. They will take action. They will do nothing beforehand. That's an oral phone call that I've had. I am very serious about this. You can give your attorney, I think about $120,000 would get you off the hook for now. And that's a whole lot cheaper than the taxpayers putting out millions. And believe me, the Federal Civil Rights Act, there is no sovereign immunity. You're not protected. The county's not protected. If I can get a jury to award, I'm going to have a U.S. Marshal take the money out of the bank account of the county and your own. I'm very serious. I'm tired of being walked on. I'm tired of living alone, not be able to make anything of my life because I don't know where it's going because you thieves are up there, and I use that word literally to the three county commissioners. Only one county commissioner can fix this. It only takes one of the three of you to fix it and make it go away. And you're under a deadline. Your attorney can advise you. This matter sits in Judge Cox's hands. She may approve the sale or may not approve it. If he walks into her and says, here, we're going to pay the judgment off, I'm sure that she won't approve the sale. It's all up to you. Good day.
Thank you, Mr. Mensing. Next, we had a request to speak. We added Honey Menus to update the board on the City of Vero Beach Rail Commission. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate being here. I'm Honey Menus, for the record. I live at 27 Starfish Drive in Vero Beach. And I'm also chair of the Indian River Neighborhood Association Executive Committee. And it's in this regard that I'd like to speak with you this morning. My comments are all about All Aboard Florida, the high-speed train proposed. And I'd like to give you a little background first. Earlier this year, people from different groups started meeting because of their concerns over this high-speed rail that's proposed. And our purpose was not to shut it down, but rather it was to identify impacts and expect that they would be mitigated by All Aboard Florida so as not to destroy our quality of life. The law allowed that, and we were inserting ourselves into that process. We agreed that we would be a coalition with that specific purpose, and we called ourselves TIC, T-I-C, the Train Impact Coalition. We were rather quiet about it because we were working. There were others taking very oppositional roles, and while we invited them to our meetings to participate with us, we did keep to our solitary purpose, and it was to specifically identify impacts as the National Council on Environmental Quality specified, and that quality is to both the natural and the human environments. We were preparing ourselves for the release of the environmental impact statement, and we would address our concerns in that process. Our group grew larger as more people became aware of what we were doing, and we have people representing interests from throughout our county. And what we've done is compiled a list of what's called local knowledge, and it's this knowledge that is often missed when the impact statements are released, and it gives us leverage as we seek mitigation. This knowledge then goes to our professionals, the staff and the consultants, so they can translate that into the acceptable language to respond to the EIS. I'd like to give you an example of some of the groups which are participating so that you can understand the depth of our work. We have both the Indian River and Sebastian Chambers of Commerce. Their business interests feel very threatened about this, not only for those that are located along the tracks, but those who would be impacted with the closings. We have Main Street, Vero Beach, the Osceola and Original Town neighborhoods. The noise and vibrations are major factors for these people. These are measurable impacts. The Heritage Center, the County Historical Society. This is very significant because we have historical sites adjacent to the tracks, and these are nationally protected. We have the Cultural Center, Barbara was just here, and also very, very significant archaeologically is the old Vero Man Ice Age site, and this is really huge because this site has the potential in 10 years to be the most significant site in the United States. The vibrations as they continue digging, and the soil, we have a grave concern over what's going on there. The potential for damage is very severe. And lately we've learned that this site now goes under the railroad tracks and across US 1. So we're not even sure what mitigation measure can be involved there. We have the Gifford Progressive League involved in our coalition too. With the train going 32 times across Gifford and the additional freight that's projected now, that community is going to be totally cut off. The Sebastian Property Owners Association, the Friends of the St. Sebastian River, they're all impacted. The school board has been participating for us, and we look at the schedules for the school buses, we look at the safety of the children. These have very high considerations on these kinds of studies. And the Gifford Middle School is located nearby. There's walkers. The Sheriff's Department has been to our meetings. We talk about response times and critical situations. The hospital is located there, adjacent. We've got the doctor's offices, surgery centers, nursing homes with very fragile patients. Their impact with noise and vibration, it's got to be measurable. The airport has been to our meetings. The conservation and wildlife, there are lists, and you have them in the comp plan, of all the flora and fauna that are protected, endangered, and threatened. And this is particularly important with the Sebastian River Bridge, because they're talking about replacing and double tracking that. This flora and fauna is located right there. On and on and on it goes. It was also very important to have representation from the three governments that are along the railroad tracks. In Sebastian, we're very grateful to Frank Watanabe for bringing to us the information about cooperating agencies. Frank had experience with this out in California, and when he learned that we were not cooperating agencies, he was rather flabbergasted. And as fast as, Sebastian, you, and the city of Vero Beach made application, he was very swiftly denied. That's highly significant. And in Vero Beach, we've had cooperation with the staff there, and then of course with you. And we're very grateful for Peter's liaison with us also, because that helped us with the regional planning, that we could understand how that was moving along. So we very carefully avoided, and this needs to be mentioned, any kind of problem that sunshine violations could have occurred. We made sure that that did not happen at any of our meetings. So a lot of good work was done. Then the EIS was just released, and it is just very, very deficient. There are indices missing from over 30 categories. I think it's like 34. There's no ridership studies. There's no detailed track plans. There's nothing about grade crossings. There's no historic resources even itemized in that. There's no minority population data, no noise and vibration reference tables that we can even refer to, no rare species, on and on and on. Personally, I was shocked. This is not professional. Well, we had to deal with that, but then bang, what happens? What comes along? A brand new development. All Aboard Florida is now seeking funding from what is called private activity bonds. When it was funding just through the railroad, the RRIF, they're required to do the environmental impact. But now, if they're seeking funding with these private activity bonds, it appears that this EIS is not going to be required if they get the 100% funding there. And we don't have any new details about the funding, but we do find it a very threatening situation. The government will be a conduit for PABs, private activity bonds, but we don't know if that's going to be federal, state, or local. We just don't have that information at this point. So where we are now is just, how do we go about protecting ourselves? We can't abandon the work responding to the EIS because we're still obligated to that early December deadline in case they're still going to have the RIF loan. But we have to take it further now because we know they're seeking these private activity bonds, and that's where this effort has to translate politically because it's political, it's government, and that's where the bonds originate. I'm suggesting that we coordinate this effort between our three governments so there is a singular response from our county. We are working professionally with the staff, responding to the EIS, but we have to unify that political response. Last night, Vero Beach had a joint meeting between their city council and their railroad commission, and what they did do was they passed a motion to develop a memorandum of understanding, and I hope you can find this agreeable. Talk about it, please. The people in the community really need your help. We can't be fragmented at this point. We can't be burdened duplicating work that another government might be doing, because the interest and the concerns here with all of the people, they're not limited to political boundaries. We do have to stand together, and our coalition is here to assist in any way that we possibly can. This means a lot to all of us. Is there any question that I could answer?
Well, honey, just what did the MOU ask? What is it they were looking for?
They just passed it last night, that they're going to develop this. I think Jim O'Connor was going to be bringing it forward. That's the only information I have.
Okay. Well, I know, the board, we just last week passed a resolution taking a position of totally against the train. It doesn't matter what they mitigate or what they offer or anything. It's shoot it, kill it. I know that our additional consulting engineers have been working with the other city managers of both Sebastian and Vero. I know Dylan has been in quite a bit of contact with Mr. Comment and can't think of Mr. Ginsburg and Sebastian. Thank you. So we stand more than ready to cooperate with everybody and participate.
The one thing I can tell you on another motion last night, what Vero did was they're going to be coming forward with another resolution, and it will closely mimic yours.
Great. Yeah. And we'll be glad to provide them the wording we use if they're interested.
Already done, sir.
Well, there you go.
Okay.
Dylan's
well, if we can have that cooperation between our governments to protect these people, this is all that matters to us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, honey.
Thank you.
Chairman Bryan, I have a question for Dylan that you may be able to chime in on. If all the counties that the Phase 2 of All Aboard Florida are going to go through receive notice that the RIFLUN application has been rescinded, if this is an because there's a series of timelines that I think would happen. If we receive such notice, what is the comment window on the EIS? When is the date that I'm wondering, when do they get bound by the EIS, even if they may withdraw their RIFLUN application at some point, or do they have to withdraw the RIFLUN application to be, because if they go private funding or PABs or whatever, the EIS is no longer required. To
the best of our knowledge, that is correct. However, we are analyzing some other legal issues pertaining to the fact that they are seeking several different types of federal approvals, and whether the EIS would still be required for those types of issues. So we're examining that issue as well.
They weren't sure that they could get 100% funding either with the PABs, so it's up in the air. We just don't know, and we don't know where they're going after it, whether it's federal, state, or even a local economic development that's possible for them.
At this point, we've got to act as if the RIF loan is moving forward and the EIS needs to be responded to. We have no other choice to.
I wonder at what point do they become bound by the obligations of the EIS? Do they have to stop the process at some point to be no longer bound by the EIS?
And again, the EIS is merely just, as it states, an environmental impact statement. So it's just an assessment of the environmental impacts and the potential mitigation options associated with it. So I'm not sure if it's quote-unquote bound by it, but certainly if they were to proceed forward with the RIF loan, then...
Because I know through here, once you get into Brevard, you actually have new track being laid west on 528 to Orlando. Here, they're replacing the old track that used to be here, which is what they were doing down south, which is why the approval process seemed to be much simpler, because they're just putting back what they used to have. But once you get further north, where you're actually putting in new track, it seems like there's different opportunities available, even if they go the private funding side, that they can, when you're putting in something that's never been there before, that's another set of hoops to go through. So, okay, we'll just have to keep track.
And please keep in mind, as the board had requested, next week the county attorney's office will be presenting a sort of executive summary of the review of the draft EIS that has been performed so far.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, honey. Thank you all for moving the public speakers up. And with that, Stan, thank you for your patience. We will now move to public hearings. The first public hearing is a request for the Board of County Commissioners to consider an ordinance to approve new impact fee schedules for residential uses and automated warehouse use, and to modify the Title 10 impact fee ordinance regulations for the unincorporated Indian River County and municipalities. The memorandum is dated October 1st, 2014. This is legislative in nature. And with that, I'll turn this over to the Community Development Director, Mr. Stan Bowling. Stan, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I go into a brief PowerPoint presentation, I do just want to recognize that on the county staff side, this has been a team effort. I appreciate the efforts of Phil Mattson and Jason Brown, as well as Dylan Reingold and Chris Mora. It's been a team effort. That's why a number of us are up here. But I would like to go to the PowerPoint now and give you all just a little bit of background. I know this is actually the fifth meeting or workshop that you all have participated in the update itself. In July of last year, the board hired Tyndale Oliver, who are here, to conduct an update of impact fees. That's a normal type of process that's done every 3 to 4 years, and that's certainly part of what's been going on. But also a more complex portion of the task for the consultant was to come up with a methodology for decreasing non-residential impact fee rates and avoiding or minimizing increases to residential rates. They have accomplished that with the affordable growth methodology. In January of this year, there was a board workshop, and the consultant presented a preliminary report. That report did not, at that time, include school impact fee information, and they presented the affordable growth methodology. In February and March, staff conducted road shows to go to different municipalities and interested groups and present those preliminary findings and get feedback. And then in April, you all took action on the non-residential impact fee portions, and there were significant decreases using the affordable growth methodology and some recommendations from staff. And just some examples here on this slide. A bank with drive-through, the impact fee rates went down almost 50%, retail over 30%, motel, manufacturing, and warehousing all over 50% reductions based on the affordable growth methodology and staff's recommendations. In June of this last summer, the board held a workshop on residential impact fees, and that included school impact fee proposals. The consultant presented those items, and the board requested that the school board hold a workshop and a special meeting and vote on school impact fees. And the school board did conduct a workshop in these very chambers last month and voted to request that the board adopt the recommended impact fees for schools. And that is part of what is proposed and under your consideration this morning. There are really 4 items before you all, and this is the same as presented in the staff report. One is the final technical report that the consultants have issued, and the action that the board is recommended by staff to take would be to accept the final technical report. There's also the complete impact fee schedules, including the residential fees, which include the recommended school impact fees, and also one new category added to the non-residential fee schedule, which was adopted in April, and that's adding the high cube automated warehouse. Now, the consultant will give you a few more figures on that, but that's really a huge reduction in impact fees where we were, say, last March, 80%, 75 to 80% off. That's clearance rack type of territory there for high cube automated warehouses because of the trip reductions, principally for that type of use. Put us in really good position for distribution warehouses, that sort of thing.
And Stan, that would be something like the CVS
exactly.
distribution center.
That's exactly correct. So that's quite a change. The third item are text changes to the impact fee ordinance itself, where we have to update the LOS level of service standards that are used for the impact fee calculation purposes. Again, the methodology is no different than what's been used before, but that's the asset-based level of service. We also addressed appeals and individual assessments in the text changes and proposed a new exemption for improvements to older structures. And then fourthly, have a fee resolution attached that would eliminate one application review fee, refunds for non-commencement, and also reduce application review fee for individual assessments. And what I would like to do is to focus now on those first two items, the technical report and the actual impact fee schedules, including the school impact fees, and take that discussion first and have the consultant, Tyndall Oliver, go over those items, and then take up items 3 and 4 after we discuss those issues. And as you all have seen before, Steve Tyndale and Nugent Camp are here from Tyndall Oliver. Also here today is Tyson Smith, the attorney that they use and have been used through the process. And I will turn it over to Tyndale Oliver now so they can put up their PowerPoint.
Good morning. Is the microphone on? You have a little green light? Okay.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. How's that? We have a brief presentation just summarizing the methodology and the rates, and then turning over to our legal counsel as well. In terms of the methodology, this study used what we call consumption-based approach, which is really looking at the capital asset value per person for each infrastructure area. And what that represents is the community's investment in today's dollars into any given infrastructure. And this was also the methodology used in the 2005 report. It's exactly the same. And the basic impact fee formula used both in the last study and this study is cost minus credit, and cost is measured in terms of the asset value again, and what it would take to build that asset today. And from that, we subtract any future contributions from new development toward the same asset through other sources, other taxes, so that we are not double charging. And that net cost is multiplied by the demand component to come up with fees for each land use. And demand is measured in terms of vehicle miles of travel for transportation, student generation rates for schools, and then the population density for all other fees. So that consumption-based approach gives us our maximum calculated fee. Like Stan mentioned, in this study, we also applied affordable growth strategy to provide policy assistance. So it's what basically this is looking at future growth rates and the available funding and determining potential discount levels while still maintaining the level of service. And we've been using this methodology over the past several years. As the economy turned down and the growth rates decreased, communities approached us, we want to somehow share the burden, but what is the appropriate discount rate? Do we just pick it, or do we have anything we can go by? So we sort of develop a calculation that shows at what point the level of service starts suffering. So that's what basically this was. This is really a tool for policy decision. It's not a legally required number that you have to adopt. It's just giving you a sort of a benchmark to start working from. In terms of residential fees, so the first column, it shows what the fees are under the current schedule. And then the full fee is the maximum fee under consumption-based approach, like same as 2005. So if you were to implement the full fee, fees would go up anywhere from 60% to 87% higher. With the affordable growth approach, the increase is anywhere from 5% to 20% almost. Then staff provided their own recommendations. They recommended adopting the affordable growth with some differential in 4 areas. And this was based on what they see as the needs, upcoming needs in the near future. So they recommended the full fee for emergency services, 75% of the affordable growth fee for parks, and 50% of it for public buildings, and then the suspension of library impact fees for the near future. In addition to county staff, school board provided their own recommendations. They held a workshop in September, discussed past and future use of impact fees, and they recommended adopting the affordable growth rate. The rate for schools, affordable growth rate, is very conservative. It is actually lowest of all the fees that for the jurisdiction that adopted fees in the state. So your current adopted rate, 1756, is already the lowest, and the affordable growth rate keeps it about the same, a little bit lower. And statewide, the fees for those jurisdictions that have school impact fees ranging anywhere from about $1,900 to $8,700. So this is a very conservative fee. So when we make all these adjustments, take the staff's recommendation and school board's recommendation, the fees are, for residential land uses, it's decreasing for 3 of them. It's staying about the same for small homes. It's an increase of 0.5%. And then there's a 2.5% increase for the multifamily. And then these rates, if we look at some of the surrounding jurisdictions, it's within the range of that. So your mid-sized single family would be under this scenario about $8,600, and Brevard County, St. Lucie County, Martin County, they are ranging anywhere from $7,400 to almost $14,000. In terms of high cube warehouse, that would be a recommendation of adding a new non-residential land use. And these are the facilities that are really large facilities, but they have a very small employment. They have a high level of mechanization, so they don't generate as many trips as the typical, more traditional warehouse. So the rate is about half the regular warehouse rate based on the IT trip generation, which is also the basis of all the other fees as far as trip rate. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Tyson for the legal review.
That'd be fine, yes, sir. You could just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sure thing. My name is Tyson Smith. I'm a Florida attorney and certified planner, and with the law firm of White and Smith Planning and Law Group, and I'm out of Charleston, South Carolina. Good to be with you. I was with you last before this commission in 2004, 2005. At the time, also appearing on behalf of Tendo Oliver, my client in this case. And I was asked to appear before you today in case you have questions about legal aspects of our work throughout this project and the calculation of the impact fees in general. As I look back over the last 10 years, several things have changed, and the most unpredictable one was, of course, the Great Recession. During the last 10 years, we've also had a new impact fee statute adopted in Florida. It didn't add a whole lot. It was mostly procedural in nature. We've also seen significantly around the state and around the country a trend away from impact fees. So local governments around the country either repealing impact fees entirely or reducing them. And that's certainly been the case here. The impact fee is a mechanism that gives you the flexibility to respond over time to these types of things that can't be predicted. Growth rate changes, economic changes nationwide, now globally, of course. But what continues to guide impact fees in Florida is the dual rational nexus test. I don't want to go too deeply into that because I know you've spent time with that standard, but it is the standard that it continues to apply in Florida. And it's the standard that guides my advice to my client in this case as they develop the calculations for you. That generally is a standard that says that the fee can't exceed the actual demand created by those who are paying it. And that's what this study is about. It calculates that fee and ensures that it doesn't exceed that proportionate demand. Okay. The second part of the test is one that says benefit. It's called benefit prong of the dual rational nexus test, and that says once you collect the fee from new development, you got to give them back what they paid for. Okay, and that's done through your capital planning programs and your ordinance itself. So those are the parameters. As Negan pointed out, Tendo Oliver has developed for you sort of a fiscal planning tool, the affordable growth strategy for evaluating to the degree to which you can reduce fees without reducing level of service, and that's been part of our discussions throughout as well. So I'm here if you have questions, and happy to help.
Just one question I have, just to clarify, then the technical report that staff is asking us to adopt, in your opinion, that the total fee that they have calculated there is a legally defensible fee that they have calculated, and then through the affordable growth mechanism, we're just finding a way to subsidize that fee, but the initial fee itself, in your legal opinion, has been legally and properly calculated?
I believe it has. As I said, the guidance that I give Tendo Oliver and at times your staff has been based on the dual rational nexus test. Florida probably has more cases on impact fees than any other state. Okay, they've been doing them longer than any other state since the late 70s, depending on how you define impact fee. Unfortunately, those cases haven't addressed every situation that any impact fee consultant will confront, every fork in the road when they calculate impact fees. That said, we have good parameters laid out by the courts. They've been the parameters that have guided this study, and in my view, the study is consistent with the existing law today.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Gentlemen, anyone have any questions of either Mr. Smith or the other consultants?
I do. On the school impact fee, and the one part I can't wrap my head around, because to me in my mind there's a missing element. And on the schools, if you have a school district, you have your kindergarten, all the way up through 12th grade. You have a significant portion of share provided by those who don't participate in the revenue stream, which are charter schools, which are about 15% of our local district. Then you have what is the undefined excess capacity in the school district. How many, and I know with schools it's not as easy as fire stations and libraries and jails. I know it's more complicated that you may have a South County kindergarten district seat available, but the new student's in the North County and you can't transfer that available seat up to there. Yeah. But without an inventory of the excess capacity per school by grade, I don't know if there's enough potential capacity to meet the 10-year growth plan, because the district, I think, over the 10 years is looking at growing by less than 10%. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it's Stan, what is it? Is it about, it's 1,000-something new students over the 10-year period?
Yeah, I think it's around more like 1,500.
1,500, right. So I don't know, is there 1,500 open seats in the system to know that they can meet their 10-year window, and if they can meet that, do they need to charge?
Right.
And that I've asked that question a couple of times, and even at our workshop hearing, they said they didn't know how many student stations, and when I guess real, because you have the fish, and then you have permanent student stations, and you have fish, and fish is a lower functional number. I guess that's more of the real number, if that's the right word. You may have seats, but you can't use them. So fish is the lower number of the capacity, and without still not knowing, is there 1,500 seats in an appropriate scattered mix throughout the county that would allow for some? Now we have, in the past, we've had growth shifts from South County now more to the northwestern county, and it's kind of moved a little bit back and forth. Well, not unfortunately, but if you've had a lot of payments of South County new permits that paid school impact fees, but the new school needed to be built in Fellsmere, then that's built because of their capacity. Then they need a school down here, but all their money down here got used up there. So first part is on the excess capacity of what's there. How do you define that when they can't seem to define it themselves, or they weren't able to provide a number? And I know the complexities, it's not a simple number, but you should be able to go by school and by grade and go, okay, kindergarten we got 3, we've got 2 here, and come up with some excess capacity. At our jail facility, we have a wing that's closed because so that's excess capacity, so we're not going to be collecting that fee to build another jail because we know we have capacity sitting there. So that's where I'm trying to get on the school side, similar to what we've done with some of the other ones, where we know we have sufficient excess on the books. Doesn't say you don't establish the fee, you establish the fee, but then do you collect it or not becomes the second question.
Okay. I understand the question, and you're right. It is probably one of the most complex areas of the impact fee practice. Roads would be a close second, but you articulated very well all the complexities, so I won't reiterate that. So the question is, does having capacity in the school system to shift kids around today, various school systems, it's spread here, it's there, prohibit the adoption of impact fees or necessitate the need for impact fees? And in my view, in your situation, that need still exists. The excess capacity or any free seats, so to speak, don't seem excessive. They're consistent, in my experience anyway, with what other Florida districts deal with in terms of just operations. Unfortunately, again, we don't have guidance from the court systems or the legislature on how to handle this level of complexity. I will say this. There was a case out of Maryland a few years ago. And in that case, it was out of Anne Arundel County. And in that case, the plaintiff was in a high school district, paid the fee, the fees were spent on a high school in a different district. Okay, and you know how these feeder system, her kids, or presumably any students generated by her house, would never see, at least in the near term, the use of that expenditure of monies anyway. Who knows what's happened since then, which is important to bear in mind with impact fees. There's an ebb and flow. We're taking a snapshot in time today with what the needs are, what we think they'll be, and we'll have to correct as we go along, and it's a constant correction with impact fees. That's why you need to update every year. In that case, the court said that local government needed the flexibility, had to have the flexibility to deal with these types of planning contingencies, and upheld that expenditure. So at least there's some judicial recognition of this complexity in school impact fees. In my view, I know their needs have been identified by the school district. I know they articulated that at the workshop in September. The court in St. John's, which was a school impact fee case in Florida, said to identify that need piece, here's how you do it. You identify a student generation rate, and you have identified needs in terms of capacity, plans to build capacity for new growth. Whether the courts then would get into what I view as a local government decision about how to allocate seats and move seats around, I would somehow expect not. So, yeah, it's going to turn your question, you get a long answer, but I want to be precise because it is a complex one.
And I don't know how, if this is coming up in other states, but when you have charter schools filling a greater percentage of, the reason our district growth has been flat or declining in some, depending on what period of time you measure, with the charters picking up the slack, but they don't get any of the revenue. Right. To me, that seems unequitable that there's not a sharing of that. Since we're talking district-wide, so it's the whole county footprint, and they're absorbing 15% of the students, but they don't get to share in 15% of the revenue.
Right. My client appears to want to speak. Let me.
Sorry, we do not include the charter students in the calculations. Our student generation rates would have been higher if we included them. We would have to charge for that. We don't include that inventory in the cost component either. So we really don't charge for them, and that's why we don't collect and share for them either. So it's almost like a separate system. This is only school board owned traditional schools, school board run schools, and it's every component includes only the school board, does not include charter schools.
Now I know in this, because I know part of I have to see what page it was on, where it had the student station and then the transportation element. I know that I think I understand that on the transportation side, the federal transportation dollars count the district that includes charters, so they get compensation for the transportation of the charter student equivalent, but again, that stays in the district, doesn't move over, and I just kind of see this continuing unequitable revenue sharing of other revenue streams with the charters, but that may be for another legislative solution or something. I know there's just doesn't seem, when you have somebody picking up a bigger part of the burden that provides relief to the district, but you pick up all the burden on your own back and not sharing in any of these opportunities.
I see your point, but I agree it probably is a policy one.
All right, okay, I'm finished for the moment.
Tyson, just one other question on the dual nexus, and you'd mentioned some of the court cases. Do those court cases, do they focus more on the collection of an impact fee or the expenditure of the impact fee?
The cases have generally focused certainly more on how the fee program is set up and calculated than it has on the expenditure. But they probably could be read, some of them could be read to address expenditures as well.
Okay, so it's more that whether the consultants accurately counted the total cost and
correct
went through all the calculations and came up with a dollar amount that is legally defensible. Is that?
And most importantly, not in excess of their impact.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Davis?
Just a couple things. I've always said in this whole process that I could make the justification that building a fast food restaurant could actually save trips versus it having to drive twice as far to one. And the same goes with any other facility. And I've always called this monkey science at best, but you've laid out a cognitive thought process. But really my biggest concern, I suppose, is in the event that somebody does take this to court, in the event that somebody does challenge it, and since it is the county commission that is going to be levying this, if you will, on residential construction, whose responsibility is it, or have you had any experience with anybody having to refund? And if so, whose is it? And if not, whose do you think it would be?
Well, it would be the counties.
So we would have to, out of our general fund?
Out of your impact fee fund. So these will be set aside and earmarked separate from general funds. So one of the, I mentioned earlier, having to sort of adjust as you go along. It's the nature of impact fees. One of the provisions we put into ordinances, again, not required by court expressly, not in the statutes, but part of the practice, is the requirement that impact fees be spent relatively close in time to the time they were paid. And that guarantees me as a payor of impact fees that I'll get that benefit, sufficient benefit. In your case, it's within 6 years. So over that 6-year period, you will have known if you're going to have a challenge or anything like that. If you have a challenge, you would know you need to protect those funds before expending them. That very likely would be a remedy in the case of a successful challenge, that they would be returned. So those funds are earmarked and not spent for a while.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, guys, there's only 2 areas in which we levy the impact fee but don't govern the expenditure. One of those, if I'm not mistaken, would be the City of Sebastian's Parks and Recreation, and the other one would be the Indian River County School District. Is that correct?
To the board on this issue specifically, in our interlocal agreement, we are indemnified by the county, by the school board. So if there was an issue with regards to the school impact fee, I would say there's the very good argument that we would not be the ones on the hook for that.
Okay.
And we do not collect. Sebastian collects their own and keeps their own, their general fund.
Okay.
We do not collect it because they have their own building department.
No pass through on that. Okay. So just school board is the only one?
Okay, thanks. I understand the question now. Yeah.
All right. That was my concern, is just making sure that we've had a vote here by a board that's elected by the public, and so I just wanted to make sure that that we weren't on the hook necessarily for. Okay. Thank you.
I think the only people on the hook are former school board members.
Yeah, right.
I do have another one. A hypothetical situation. Okay. Somebody comes in and either pulls a single family on an individual lot application, gets their permit, pays their fees. Another applicant comes in and pays building permit impact fees for a 20-unit apartment building.
Okay.
They both get their permits, they both get issued, both the permits go void, and the applicants sit on the side for a period of time, long period of time, short period of time. The districts get the money, they spend the money, the applicants come back and say, we're selling the development rights, or we're not going to build, or the permit's void, or whatever, I'd like my money back. How does, who do they apply to get their money back? To the district, who maybe already spent it towards the school because they thought the activity was coming, and then it just multiplied. Whether you in a boom time you got stuff coming in everywhere, and then the faucet turns off, and then the opposite happens. And I know we've got one case here that went through the courts for a while. Okay. With an applicant that wanted their money back. I don't think that one at the time involved school. That was not the trips and trail, but
that's Miami Lakes. That's the FVP Miami Lakes case. That's specific for the utility fees.
Right.
But there's a legitimate argument to be made similar to that, which was essentially, look, we were banking on this development coming in. We took in your money and we built the facilities that were necessary in order to serve your facility. Right. My argument in that case would be latches. You sat on your laurels.
Did they buy certificates or 1 years? Because I know that changes the game. If it's a concurrency certificate for a window,
5 year.
In that case, they had 5 years, and then those were extended by state law.
Right. And that to me is a different game than somebody paying for a individual single family permit. But
I think it'd be the same with us. If they pay for roads and other things we collect, and we might expend that building a road, and then they would get a refund for non-commencement.
Right.
It's just part of that money flow. It comes in, it goes out, but I think you would just handle it
More
the same
stays
way.
in than what, I mean, that's
Yeah,
what
I mean,
goes back
you're,
out's a
You're
small
kind of looking
portion.
at a very small minority
Right.
options there, I think.
Okay.
Commissioner Fletcher?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm still getting over the monkey science, because if this thing goes to court, we go to kangaroo court, we're going to have a menagerie.
That's pretty good.
But I'm thinking, Counselor, I understand the elimination of the charter school consideration in the methodology, but if the charter schools represent 12% growth, isn't there any caution that these numbers could be skewed? Not they are. They could be skewed.
Not that I'm seeing. What's your...
I mean...
We did not include any of the charter schools.
No, and I understand that, but...
Or their student counts.
This is all about the students. This is all about the kids. This is all about growth. This is all about their future. We eliminate 12% of the consideration right off the equation. Just there's no variable. Didn't mean to...
I'll give you a couple comments. We've tracked the school generation rate for 20 years in Florida by county and the trends are down, and they're down for two reasons. One, the vacancy rates in the counties are up. They're double. It used to be 10% vacant, now you're 20. In terms of number of kids that are going to move back into the homes. So in general, we moved from 0.33 to 0.32 to 0.3, and then combined with the charter schools. So yes, the fees are down, the rates are down. 5-10 years from now, the rates may be back up, the fees may be back up over a 20-year period. And yes, it does ebb and flow, and we're tracking all that. The numbers we're using, the error we're using in terms of being very conservative with the pricing and the credits and everything else is greater than the error we have in terms of worrying about the generation rate changing over this time period. So I feel comfortable that the one we've got is conservative. It's probably underestimated. We're probably not generating quite enough money with the numbers we're doing. And the trend may change back. I've seen it over 20 years, again, ebb and flow, but we're really comfortable with the number we're using being reasonable, correct, conservative, and useful in terms of trying to build a school system. But yes, there is some things going on with both the economy, the vacancy rate, and the charter schools. I think it's got the generation rates down a little bit in terms of what we're charging.
So the Reader's Digest is no concern for a skew because of the conservativeness of the
The only thing we
methodology.
could do is crank the fees up 15 or 20% with some statistical number and convince everybody they need to charge that number. They're going to have to spend more taxes rather than fees, and we don't see a great interest in that right now. If we had a client who wanted to just absolutely not use any taxes for billing anything, they would hire us. We'd run it and try to come up with a number that says if your goal is not to, over some period of time, have to use more and more taxes to pay for growth, we'd run the calculations. But right now, that's not the process we're going through. So I guess my summary is, yes, the generation rates are a little lower per home. There's a couple, three reasons why, including charter schools, where it has reduced the fees in terms of, and the revenue is going to be generated. But over a long period of time, I personally don't believe that's a big issue with funding your school system over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Steve.
And Steve, I'll open up the public hearing in just a minute, Carol. Just to make sure I'm clear on that then, you all looked at 100 new students coming into the county. And let's say the charters take 12%. So 12 students go to the charters. That still leaves 88 new students coming into the school district, and that's what you all have based your numbers on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other?
One other one is, do you see all school districts that collect impact fees that you've worked with, do them countywide, or do some of them segment their county into districts? Like here, we originally started with 8 or 9 traffic districts, and we looked at 3 was more appropriate based on what would be going on where and where you would want to collect the money and then spend the money. What do you see with schools?
For what we see is most of the counties, I think there are in Florida maybe 3 or 4 counties that have school impact fee benefit districts. All the other ones are countywide. And even what we hear from those is especially with the push from the state toward choice schools and so on, that this whole benefit district is really not working. They have magnet schools, students travel from district to district, so it's really, they are all, so far what we hear is they're also inclined to move toward a countywide benefit district.
Okay.
Any other questions of the staff or the presentation? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. At this point, as Stan mentioned, we would like to just focus on the adoption of the technical report, which is in our backup, and the residential fee schedule, which also we're considering the cube warehouse rate. Okay. So with that, and Tyson, you're going to stick around, please. Okay. Thank you. Open up the public hearing. Ms. Johnson, would you like to? Good morning. Welcome.
It's nice to be together again. I wish we get on another subject, but I do appreciate the collaboration. I first of all would like to extend a thank you from the entire board. Fellow board member Dale Semchik is with me here today, and I think you all know how important this is to us. But I really wanted to answer Commissioner Fleischer's question that he did propose, because I don't think it was fully answered. First of all, by law, it is stated in the law that impact fees do not apply to charters. It's been made very clear to you that this study did not include the charter school students, and those numbers have been reflective of that. And I appreciate the fact that we have, the expert is always the gentleman who is from out of the area, so it's nice to see another state represented there. So, but this is very important to us, and I believe that you have already received a commitment from in our discussions, some of our other meetings, that some of this is definitely policy. Absolutely policy within your purview to make those decisions. We respect that. We would expect if you were sitting out here and we were sitting up there, that you also would respect that from us, and we do respect how you have done this. But I really wanted to just answer Commissioner Fleischer's question, because I didn't feel as though it was completely answered.
Madam Chair, my question was posed just for an opinion of is there a possibility, perception of skew just based on that analysis?
And I appreciate
understand the law.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Johnson, I see you have several of your staff members here. Gentlemen, does anyone have any questions on the school district staff?
I'm not sure where this one would get directed to, and maybe if this was put on a piece of paper, it would be easy to follow. You'd have Indian River County total students enrolled in public schools, homeschool, charter school, private school, to get an understanding of how many kids are really in school, and then what kind of school are they in, to get an idea of what part of the puzzle does each element play. I know the homeschool section has also been a kind of growing in leaps and bounds. I don't know what their count is. I don't know who keeps track of them, but I think, don't they have to be registered and partner either with the district, or then I know there's one up in Virginia, they can sign up and be...
Well, there's also a virtual school that has...
That too.
That number has... It hasn't grown as fast as some people think, but it has grown.
Just to get an understanding of really what is the educational element, how big is the pie of how many people are in it, because I don't know.
Well, I'll speak to the political aspects of things and some of the legal aspects. But as far as any of the finite numbers, I would like to refer to staff. But if you would like for us to, if any of you have additional questions, but if you would like for us to get a list to you as to that breakdown,
it could just be
absolutely
helpful knowledge. Yeah.
And I do not want to misquote. We do get that breakdown. We see that. We do see that, but I don't want to misquote as to what the numbers are. The other thing is that, with it, there will be no, we hope we have an upturn in our economy, but unless there's growth, impact fees are not collected, and of course they're only collected on the residential that could impact. So if you have a 55-plus community, those things are not included in any of those studies. And I know you've heard that before, but...
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else from the public wishes to speak? Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
It's a surprise.
Startled.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Charlie Wilson, 2134 18th Avenue in the city of Vero Beach. Thank you.
Only we would find that funny.
Did I mention that I was 2134 18th Avenue in the city of Vero Beach?
Thank you, sir, for clarification.
A couple of quick things. First is there are some facts here. One thing I want to point out to you is when the consultants use the word conservative, it's not the way we normally use the word conservative. Conservative means that they're figuring it out so they can get the most money from the public that can possibly be received from the public. That's the word conservative. The second is that the fact is that with the schools here today, is that they've spent millions in impact fees and they have less student stations today than they did when we started in 2005. That's a fact. It is also a fact that the county itself could not use these funds in the way that they're being asked to use these, for instance, with a fire station. It is a fact that if you tore down a fire station, you could not use impact fee money to build another fire station if you haven't exceeded the capacity. Those are simply the facts. Now, having said that, I'm here really not to argue the case anymore. This is the final day of a long history of fights that have happened for 3 or 4 years. And commissioners have sat through hours and hours of testimony having to do with impact fees. And I want to thank you because you've been more than patient, more than welcoming, sometimes challenging, but you have adequately, more than adequately allowed me and others who have wanted to discuss this issue time to do so, and so I don't need to do a whole bunch of it today. The one thing that we didn't mention when we were talking particularly about schools is, number one, when the school board met, Matt, one of the school board members, Matt McCain, thank you very much. I had a brain freeze. Matt McCain mentioned that the school board was not there to determine the policy or the legality of what they were asking for. In fact, he asked me to reimburse him for his half hour of having to spend at the school board meeting, and I saw him at the store and promised him that I would send him a check if he'd tell me how much that half hour cost, and he said no charge. But some things we have learned in this long journey amongst commissioners. I think that one thing that commissioners have learned is more about having to do with the capacity of impact fees, the necessity for capacity, the necessity for the dual rational nexus. I think y'all know much more about impact fees than you did before. I think you realized, of course, that you had a notification problem, that there was a lot of communications problems where people didn't know that they had money that they should have been able to be received, and you acted upon that. So I thank you for your diligence and your representation of the people for doing that. A couple of things I've learned about impact fees, and this may surprise you, is that impact fees have its purpose. And impact fees can help do what they're designed to do if you let them do it. If you follow the rules of impact fees are fairly efficient at making up for time of growth that doesn't burden the citizens that are already here. That's one of the things that I've learned. However, I've also learned that government makes the rules and are perfectly willing and able to change them anytime, which is what we have done several times along this pathway, and one of the things that we're doing today. Previously, for the 5 years that Bob Keating and I fought about this issue, Bob Keating adamantly stated that you could not separate residential and commercial. All of a sudden, mystically, we have discovered a way to do that. Now, we looked at a whole list of things up there, of things that have gone down, 50% to a bank, 40%. We've been yelling about that for years. But we couldn't do it until all of a sudden, now we finally get around to being able to do that. We have changed interest rates. We have changed fees that were charged to people who wanted to find out if they had a refund due or not. You have made a lot of positive steps, and you're making those steps today. Now, I admit, all right, and you have your consultants here, and the lawyer has come in to tell you what needs to be told. The city of Vero Beach does that quite often, is they get lawyers and consultants to tell you that the FMPA is the play, that we have to be there and that there is no challenge to the FMPA. And a friend of mine told me the other day, of course, if you'll give me $200,000, I'll find you a lawyer and a consultant that will tell you that Elvis is alive and living here in Indian River County. And so it appears that despite law and despite the rules that are in place, that you are going to be given cover by the consultants to be able to change the rules again. And that's fun. I want you to know that it's one strange thing, and I know this doesn't, I'm in the business of impact fee refunds. And some people ask me, gosh, why are you doing this all the time? Because frankly, if you don't pass the school impact fee, I don't have clients. The only way I have clients and the only way I can get a refund is if you give this $1,700 that the school district says they want, but the law says they don't need, then you go ahead and give that to him, because that's what gives me customers. So I'm sort of in a quandary, because for years now, and my friend Bob will tell me that I need to follow the law, and I do want to follow the law. And I believe...
Actually, today I'll tell you that you should be out campaigning for your city council race. So.
And thank you for the advice, and I will be doing that. But today we also have to work for a living, and that's what I'm doing today. But thank you for your concern. What I'd like to end with is, frankly, this whole episode for the last 5 years, encumbering things, burning off millions, changing the rules, disincorporating or disenfranchising a couple of hundred people, have been a blemish on an otherwise stellar career for some people. But I want to thank the commissioners, because each of you have taken more than enough time and been more than kind. I thank you. You do whatever it is that you think is right. I think that just the fact that we're taking the fees, and you know what this is, you're subtracting the fees that you can no longer charge, and you're raising the fees on the ones that you can charge, the remaining two. And so all of a sudden, what they do is they call it, we're doing a reduction. Well, they're not doing a reduction. They're just transferring from the places they can't collect money to places they can collect money. So the fact is that you've got one group of fine public servants that want money from the people talking to another group of fine public servants who use money from the people, and they're going to ask you if you'll give them money, and you're going to tell them yes. But I appreciate your effort, and we'll go now to the next level. You have done your adequate job, and I really am very grateful for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public? Yes, please, come on up. Dan? Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Dan Lamson, the Executive Director of the Indian River Neighborhood Association, and I have a short statement to read. The Indian River Neighborhood Association supports the adoption of the staff recommendation on the amendment to the impact fee ordinance. We further believe that you should continue to collect the school impact fees. The affordable growth methodology helps lower the rates and numbers of impact fees while adequately maintaining the level of service. This methodology is based on growth of 1.4% per year over 20 years, and we have been growing at 1.1% for the last 2 years. Staff feels comfortable that we will be at or under the 1.4% rate for the foreseeable future. Secondly, the school board voted in favor of the county collection of impact fees, but it's up for you to decide whether or not to do so. If you do not choose to collect these fees, the school board may need to debt finance a far larger percentage of the cost of new schools and so on. Failure to have these funds raised via impact fees could result in higher taxes for county residents. We wanted to compliment staff for their hard work and for coming out to one of our board meetings. I think it might have been in April this year, to discuss the new changes to the impact fee schedule. And in conclusion, we encourage you to support these changes and hope the county will continue to collect the school impact fees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, Dale. Welcome.
Good morning. Board members, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to your consultants and to your staff, and to our staff as well. And I just want to say that there are a lot of good things that were brought up today. And so it's good that it's transparent and in the public. As you know, we came from a period way back where there was the growth and the anti-growth feelings. And I think the county and the commissioners at the time adopted the, we want healthy growth in our community, but growth should pay for itself. And therefore, your ordinance to collect impact fees, I think, was just and right. And as far as we know, we have not been sued. And as the attorney, your attorney has recognized that we, Mr. Wesley Davis, we are indemnified by the school board here. So we are legally all okay with what has transpired and what will transpire in the future, I hope, if Charlie Wilson is correct and you will vote in our favor. First of all, the numbers that you spoke of, Commissioner Zork, I agree with you. There are some things about charter coming from a charter school and being on the charter school board. There are some issues with capital, millage rate, and other issues that should be looked at. As far as the school board impact fees, as your consultants Tyndale and Oliver have expressed, they were not used in the equation. It's a negative a zero balance, so to speak. And it is about the children. The conservative fees, though, you did have it the opposite. The fish studies are 30 roughly per classroom. With the legislative amendment, we are now down to 18 to 22 to 25. So they took the conservative of 30 that we can't use by law. And as what is very important about the affordable growth method is it is the lowest in the state, and with this ordinance it is even reduced more. It is consumption-based fee. So we have, it's a consumption-based fee. So everything works out perfectly because if it is not, if there's no growth, then it is not being collected. There is room for growth. I tell you, I sit on Fellsmere, Planning and Zoning. I could tell you that the North County is in need of schools. And as mentioned by one of the consultants with the magnet schools, you can reside anywhere in the county. And so this becomes difficult logistically, which are some of your concerns, and that's why it's so hard to quote. I know that, and I have to say thank you to our chair, if we were sitting there and you were sitting in the audience, and we were being asked to extend the collection of our ordinance fees for you. The fact that you have, these are your consultants with your figures and with your recommendations. And all I can say is that I feel that they were prudent, and I feel that, as you can see, that Mr. Wilson did say that impact fees does have a place. And it does have a purpose. Well, I will tell you, as soon as our fees are encumbered and spent, we have fulfilled the requirement of the law. So looking forward, I hope that you will entertain. We have had the public workshop. We have gone through this long, lengthy process, but I think everybody's done due diligence. And as I said, it is a consumption-based fee, and it is with the lowest calculations and the most conservative methodology that your consultants have configured. So with that, I hope that you support the school district today, and I thank you for all your help.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Anyone else from the public? Then I'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, the staff has 4 itemized recommendations, and we're discussing the first 2, which is the adoption of the final report and then the schedules. I'd like to take these one at a time. And so staff recommendation 1 is to accept the consultant's impact fee update final report dated September 26, 2014. Any discussion on that staff recommendation? So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Fleury. I believe I heard Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Zork?
Well, it's going to be, in general, a question to their attorney. If we were a county-wide fire district and we had one fire station and we tore one down over here and we built a new one here and it's still housed, a fire truck and an ambulance and that, could you use impact fees for the construction of that fire station without increasing the equipment capacity and personnel that would be inside the building?
It would just depend on the situation. I am loath to respond to a scenario like that.
Okay. Okay, because on the school side, we did have a situation where we actually physically tore down, for good reason, I'm not saying it wasn't a good reason,
right?
A fully house staff filled with hundreds and hundreds of students, tore that school down. But then we can use impact fees to replace that capacity at another place.
It would just depend on the service areas, where the delivery is being occurring.
Well, it's countywide. It's a district, so it doesn't matter, right?
But each of these improvements serve a certain area. You know, the fees collected countywide is based on countywide demand. But typically speaking, replacements aren't allowable for impact fee expenditures. On the other hand, I can't take as an assumption that tearing one down over here and building a new one over here is merely replacement.
If you don't mind, I can. If you had 5 fire stations and you tore one down, and you took taxes and built 3 more, and now you went from 4 to 7 with taxes, and then you took impact fees and built one, exactly where you put that one, that ninth one you built with impact fees, but it was close to the one you tore down. If you took taxes and built 3 for the one you tore down, and the school board has replaced that school multiple times with their taxes. So we feel very comfortable that they're not using an impact fee. I don't know about exact locations, and they've done a pretty good job of keeping track of where they spent the money in which school, but we checked and made sure that you have rebuilt that school multiple times with current taxes, and you're using the fees to add capacity beyond that. So we don't feel like the impact fees are replacing that school. You've done it with taxes, and we know you tore one down, but I've not had a client who has got themselves where they can't tear something down, especially if they're building multiple times. An example I give you, if you had 5 stations, you tore one down, and you had 4, you took your taxes and built 3 more, and now you got 7, and then you have an impact fee to build your 8th one. The impact fee didn't replace that one, and I think in your case, because of the large investment in taxes to build new construction, you have more than replaced that school with taxes.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Davis?
The question then to both the attorney. The level of service snapshot is when we approve the study. So it stays that way for 3 years or whenever it's due to be reviewed according to our ordinance. Based on what you just said, though, I was under the impression that whenever I pay my impact fee, it is for my effect from that point forth of me getting my CO. So for your argument about taxes in the past or in the future, to me doesn't hold water whenever it's that snapshot as soon as I pay it for me.
With affordable growth strategy, we're giving you a credit for the taxes you're going to pay, and we're giving you taxes that everybody else is paying and reducing fee further and then balancing level service. So for the first time in many years, and we've been working this many years, we're giving a double credit with affordable growth strategy, and that's the reason it's reduced. So yes, we are considering not only the taxes that you as the developer pay, which we legally have to do. We've calculated that number that says that because you got general taxes. So I don't think that's in conflict with what you're saying. We are recognizing both the developer's tax and your growth rate and the community's tax. And so it's we don't feel uncomfortable at all with the calculation and what we've done with that number we've given you.
Huh? Sorry, you asked that?
Huh?
I'm not sure where you're at, but I think I might be in the same place.
It's just, I don't see, I mean, if I understand we have a level of service snapshot today when we approve this, boom, it's there. Now, then you start talking about when you tear down a school and build a new one. I haven't even paid taxes in this community because in theory I'm not even here. I get the affordable growth strategy because as soon as I move in, I start paying my ad valorem taxes. I'm clear on that, and I follow that part of it. But as far as taking the impact fee dollars and building a school after you have just tore one down shouldn't have anything to do with me, because I had nothing to do with that. until I show up and pay my impact fees.
And I don't think it does. I think what's been said is, you've got a district-wide, county-wide rollout of improvements, adding stations, and you've got a mix of revenues that's been used for that. A small percentage has been impact fees. And you throw that replacement in, covered by other taxes. That's in the past too. I mean, again, you walk to the counter and you pull your building permit. The closure of a school and the taxes used to get to that point that you're at, your snapshot's going forward. That relocation closure, that happened years ago. That's done. That's history.
And so
you're moving forward now with.
So what we're going to do is when Charlie comes in and starts to fight it on behalf of somebody, we're going to say, Charlie, you're right, but we're not going to give you the refund because we used ad valorem dollars for this, just for that one that you're arguing.
Well,
Okay.
First, I'm not sure we'd say anybody was right.
Especially Charlie.
Wrong.
Yeah,
I think we would just look at the facts.
Should have known that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? So we have a motion from Commissioner Flory, second by Commissioner Fleischer, to accept the impact fee final report dated September 26, 2014.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this. I'm going to support it because that was unanimously by the elected officials that will be administering this.
Well, that's going to be your next vote.
Okay, but I'm just letting you know where I'm going to be on these as they come forward, and this was the first one that...
Okay. This is just kind of accepting the technical report.
Spoil the surprise.
Yeah.
Okay. So all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes 5-0. The second item, gentlemen, I'd like you to take up is staff recommendation to adopt the updated residential impact fee schedules and amended non-residential impact fee schedules to include the new high cube automated warehouse category as contained in Appendix A of the attached ordinance. And I will point out in the backup that the impact fee for the high cube automated warehouse will take effect November 3rd, 2014, so relatively immediately. And because some of the residential impact fees are increasing, the proposed effective date for those impact fees is February 2nd, 2015, which then does satisfy the state statutes of a 90-day window.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner, sorry.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I'm going to go ahead and move staff recommendation on this, and I'll second Commissioner Davis's concern. There are things about this that I'm not as comfortable with as I'd like to be, but this is a school board matter, and the fact that the school board took it up and voted the way they did, I'm willing to punt that responsibility to that degree. Most of the things that pertain to the county I'm particularly happy with. One correction I'd make to Mr. Wilson is I see it, and I didn't do all the math on this, but the idea that we're just changing impact fees, I think if you went back, I'm not asking you to go back to it, but if you went back to the calculation for the square foot houses in about the 2,000 foot range, they go down over 8%, and I think that's the most meaningful category we have, especially for developing the type of community that we want to have. So I think if you did a spreadsheet and put in the probable number of units for each one, you'd find out that the actual impact fees for residential, the amount it would take in, did go down significantly. I particularly like the warehouse, the high cube automated warehouse and what we're doing there, as well as finally, after a number of years, being able to reduce commercial impact fees a substantial amount in a number of categories. So, as is often pointed out, it's not a perfect world. I don't think the whole impact fee thing is perfect, but I think it's a good effort, and I think that it's a good faith effort on the part of the people who put it forward. So, on the balance, I'm comfortable making the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Just, Commissioner, sorry, I agree quite a bit with your comments. Although I do think on the commercial impact fees, I think we've calculated the full rate. It's just we're making a policy decision to subsidize it.
Oh, if I misspoke, I apologize. I absolutely agree with that,
I think the rate has been calculated at a fair level, like we did the residential. It's just how we're offsetting that cost as a policy decision.
Stand corrected.
Thank you. We have a motion for staff recommendation number 2. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, on a motion by Commissioner Slaughter, second by Commissioner O'Brien to adopt the residential impact fee schedules All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? That passes 5-0. I'd like to thank the school board for coming here. We still have 2 more items under this, but gentlemen, I'd propose we take a brief 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and have the second half. So we'll come back at 11:10.
want you out knocking on doors, Charlie. You just don't get votes by standing in front of this podium.
Call the meeting back to order, and we are continuing with item 10A1, the public hearing on impact fees. And Stan, we'll turn this back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we could go to the PowerPoint presentation, a couple of items that I do wanted to go to. Item number 3 are the text changes to the impact fee ordinance itself. Just a few items in those proposed changes. One is to update the level of service standards for impact fee calculation purposes. It includes kind of using the asset-based fee language, which again is the very methodology that's been used since 2005. Also, we wanted to make it clear that the appeals process, any items having to do with determinations regarding impact fees, has a clear appeal process. It refers to a chapter in our county code. And that process is real straightforward. A community development director makes a decision. That decision can be appealed to the county administrator. County administrator makes a decision, and that can be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. And I will say, with respect to impact fees, over the years we've had very few appeals or individual assessments, so it is rare, but this is a pretty straightforward type of process. For individual assessments, we wanted to make clear in the code that all 9 program areas, not just traffic, you can do an individual assessment. There are specifics for traffic assessments that's somewhat involved, but no changes are proposed to that. And we'll just apply accepted professional standards to the non-traffic assessments. Again, these are pretty rare. We've only had just a few over the last 20 to 25 years, but we do need to have standards. And determinations, again, of individual assessments, those are appealable as well, following that same process from staff to the administrator to this board. There is a new exemption from impact fees added. This is kind of the Linus Cadillac example that is almost mythological at this point. And what we've proposed is an exemption that is narrow in scope, but we wanted to take some of the elements that were raised in the discussions on Linus Cadillac and look at improvements to pre-impact fee structures, where an improvement such as enclosing a decades-old showroom area would have, if it would have no measurable increase in demand, that a determination could be made that no impact fee would be due. And again, any decisions based on that type of exemption would follow the same appeals process, staff to the county administrator to the board itself. Also, item number 4 we propose before you is a fee resolution to change 2 review fees. Right now, there's a $75 charge based on a previous resolution for refunds for impact fees for non-commencement. The proposal is to go to 0 on that, to have no charge for that. And then the other is the charge for individual assessments. Right now, there's a flat fee of $2,000, and the proposal is to have 5% of the assessed fee or $2,000, whichever is less. That way, if it's a smaller project and you have a smaller assessment, you basically still have an incentive to go through the individual assessment process because the fee would be less. It's based on the percentage of what your 5% of what per the schedule your assessment would be. And that's just basically a policy decision. We recognize again that individual assessments and appeals are pretty rare. And we didn't go and try to recalculate what staff's time is, just a policy decision to basically cut these fees. And staff is recommending approval of the text changes and the fee resolution changes. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Stan. Gentlemen, any questions of Stan?
No, this is just a good step in the right direction on this.
And fine verbiage, I think all too often people always look at whichever is greater. And it's just nice to see that we're looking at whichever is less.
Okay. With no questions of staff, I'll reopen the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the proposed modifications or the reduction of the application review fees? Mr. Wilson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Did I mention that my name is Charles Wilson and that I live at 2134 18th Avenue in the city of Vero Beach?
For how long?
That's in Vero.
A little over a year and long enough.
Allegedly.
No, but you did mention you only speak for 3 minutes, Charlie. So
that's true, and I've already used most of that. Well, actually, it shouldn't take, because I'm here to compliment you. And number 4 is something that we worked on together with staff and pointed out that it used to cost $18,000 to challenge a $6,000 fee. Just like when we first started and we found out it was $200 to find out whether you had a refund or not. That's been changed. That's an excellent step forward, and we're very grateful. And staff, we're grateful that we were able to work together on that particular item. So I vote for number 4. Okay. Even I vote for number 4. Now, on number 3, just a couple of quick things. We having to do with the appeals, I've gone through that appeal, and when you were asking about who's going to be responsible for defending the impact fee decision that you just made, you cannot actually go to court until you've had all the remedies, I understand, from the law firm that I'm dealing with. And so one of the remedies that you have to do is that you have to go through the appeals process here at the commission. So we will have to go through the staff appeal and then appealing to Mr. Baird and then to the county commission before we actually can forward to circuit court. But at least we have a decision now, so we know what we're going to be able to do, and both the law firm and the client, I'm sure, have been watching these proceedings, and at least we're grateful that there has been a decision made. I want to point out that one of the things that I actually agreed with the consultant too when he was talking about use of taxes to replace a deficit. Part of the impact fee rules are that you cannot fund a deficit with impact fees, that you must use tax revenues to fund deficits. Now, what that also means, however, is that if you've got a deficit in level of service, one of the things that may come up for appeal is if you've got a deficit in level of service, you may be able to impose an impact fee, but if you spend impact fees before you spend tax money to erase that deficit, then you are using impact fees to ease an existing deficit. So essentially what you're being asked to do, and it's fine, it's a policy decision, is we've made a decision that we can now use impact fees for depreciation. If you have a building that was built 20 years ago and it has water damage and you have to tear the building down, according to what you've been asked to do, is we can now use that impact fee money to rebuild that building. And I don't believe that any court is going to allow you to do that. So what I'm talking about now is the appeals process. I certainly don't mind the appeals process. I'm familiar with the statute. I would like to see some resolution where it's done quickly and with as few fees as possible. So all in all, except for I don't know what the remaking of the level of service was. I haven't seen that part of this study. But essentially, from 2005 until today, we've had one set of rules. We raised a bunch of money, we spent a bunch of money, and we changed whatever the situation was in the county. Either we added service or we didn't add enough service. And now, as of today, apparently, we're starting all over again. It's like taking your bank account and saying, okay, well, I know I owe you money, but I'm going to open a new bank account, and we're just going to wipe out everything that's happened previous to today. So with the level of service changes, the fact is that we have levels of service that we have to identify, and they're right and just. If you didn't have those level of services, and that's what's going to happen with this appeal process, if you don't have those level of services, you could build anything you wanted to. You could build 10 more of these buildings, and then 3 years from now, change your level of service, and increase it to include the 10 buildings that you just built and start all over again. So the point is that the level of service that was started when you adopted the original ordinance is in play, and especially for all those deposits that are on hand right now. So the number 4, I'm all for. I don't know what level of service numbers have been switched, so I don't know what those are, but I am aware of the appeals process, and I think these two parts should be helpful. But just so that you know, it is the county commission that has to go through the first steps. So I'm once again very grateful to all of you. At least we have a decision. We all know where we go from here. I have a job to do for the next 3 years.
So we'll see you next year.
See someone. So anyway, thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on the next 2 items? Anyone from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, if we could take item 3, staff recommendation, which is to adopt the proposed modifications to Title 10, impact fee ordinance changes, as contained in attachment 1 of our attached ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. The last staff recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution to eliminate and reduce certain impact fee related application review fees.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Flesher. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 5-0 as well. Thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Phil, Jason, Stan, job well done. And
great presentation, Phil.
Ms. Johnson and Ms. Simchek and school board members, thank you for being here and for your input. We now move to the second public hearing. And this is a quasi-judicial item. So this is a request by State Road 60 Vero LLC to rezone approximately 19.99 acres from RM8, which is residential multifamily up to 8 units per acre, to a planned development mixed-use district, and to obtain conceptual PD plan and concurrent preliminary PD plan approval for a project to be known as the Reserve at Vero Beach. One item that was added here, gentlemen, is, you should have had it on the dais this morning, is an updated list of the staff recommendations. There's one very slight change to item 2F. Did everybody receive that page for this? Yes. Okay. This is a quasi-judicial. The parties to the proceeding are Indian River County and State Road 60 Vero LLC. I'll start with Commissioner Slurry. Did you have any ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations?
Driven by the site, but not with in reference to thinking what they were doing there, and I remember no ex parte communications.
Thank you. Commissioner Zork?
Driven by the site. Actually, I believe this is one of the files I'd looked at as ongoing review of just what's coming into the county, but no communication with the applicant or the owners.
Okay. This site has come up before, I think, when we started the whole mixed-use process, and I know Mr. Barquette was at some of those early workshops, and this was a site he brought up as examples, but I don't believe I've had any specific conversation relevant to this actual proposal. Commissioner Davis?
Mr. Chairman, I have had a conversation with a surrounding resident about this, not with the owners, but an adjacent property owner. I don't know what I got to do. Just I can still keep an open mind. And
that'll be the next question when we come back to.
Okay, so I just want to let you know I did have ex parte communications, not with the applicant, but somebody else.
Okay. Commissioner Flesher?
Other than what you said, Mr. Chairman, and that was done before public view, I passed the site, I thought about the site, never discussed it.
Thank you. And then Commissioner Flesher, can you please confirm you have an open mind and are able to base your decision on the evidence presented and applicable law?
I can and will.
Commissioner Davis, I think this is where you make that affirmation.
I think I can do that.
Okay, I can. Commissioner Zork.
I can and I will.
And Commissioner Florey.
I can. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, we'll open the public hearing. As this is quasi-judicial, if anyone wishes to speak to this, could you please stand and the clerk will swear you in.
Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and start with the presentation by county staff. Mr. Bowling, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'll go to the PowerPoint slide. This is a request for a rezoning and conceptual and preliminary PD plan approval, and the process goes through staff review and then a Planning and Zoning Commission hearing and a recommendation which has been made by the Planning and Zoning Commission and to you all, and this will be really the final hearing on the rezoning. The preliminary PD plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission has already acted on, subject to you all approving the rezoning request. And later in the process, there's staff review for more detailed permits, and then final plat would probably be done by phase, and you all would see that after project construction. The subject site is just under 20 acres, located on the south side of State Road 60, also on between and north of the College Lane. It's west of 58th Avenue, Kings Highway. And as you can see from this zoning map, the subject site is zoned RM8, residential multifamily up to 8 units per acre. There's 6 unit per acre multifamily immediately to the west, and then west of that is single family zoning up to 6 units per acre. To the north and across State Road 60 is all general commercial, and to the east is general commercial, and to the southeast is general commercial. On the south side of College Lane, multifamily, residential, and agricultural zoning, those are all institutional uses, the charter high school, as well as Indian River State College. And so in this particular area, this site is surrounded by a number of uses, really commercial on 2 sides, and institutional on a 3rd side, and then multifamily on the 1 side. And staff's position is that the existing zoning, RM8, is appropriate for the site, but the site's also appropriate for mixed-use development. And as you stated earlier, Mr. Chairman, this was a site that was discussed when the mixed-use policies were put into effect a few years ago. This is a picture of the subject site with an arrow, and you can see that the site, although it was once, many years ago, had an agricultural use on it. It's been cleared for a number of years. Of note in particular is a conservation area. There's actually an existing easement over this conservation area that was set up with the first residential project that was approved but has since expired. There are a few other trees that are kind of isolated on the site itself, but generally it's more or less a field except for the conservation area. And you can see to the east the existing commercial development, the Olive Garden in the Century Town Center site. There is an east-west driveway that connects the shopping center sites all the way through the Home Depot and behind the McDonald's and Chipotle in the CVS all the way through, and has an access on to 58th Avenue, right in, right out only. There's also an existing driveway open to the public, 2-way, north and south along Century Town Center. There is proposed with this project a connection to College Lane to this basically stub out up here by the commercial, and then an entrance off of State Road 60. This is the land use surrounding the site, and again, it is a type of land use that does allow for mixed-use development. And it's not only is it medium-density residential, but also along a major arterial, State Road 60, and it is immediately adjacent to an existing commercial industrial node that's shown in the red and the pink. What's proposed on this 20 acres is 159 multifamily units composed of 7 3-story buildings and about 4.5 acres of commercial in the form of 3 different parcels. And I apologize for shifting orientation here, but north is to the right now, State Road 60 over here. And the buildings that are shown in brown are the proposed commercial buildings on the 3 commercial out parcels. The 7 multifamily buildings are shown here, and it's kind of golden color, and then the smaller building is the clubhouse for this particular project. Now, there was some healthy discussion, not only at the staff level, but also at the Planning and Zoning Commission, as to the type of design that's proposed here. Some mixed-use type of projects are on smaller parcels, like the Family Dollar in Gifford, and that was essentially kind of mixed use was used in place of a neighborhood commercial zoning approach that we had a few years ago, mixing in residential, and that's one kind of context for mixed use. This type of context on this 20 acres, this is still very much a kind of automobile-oriented design. It does allow for integration of vehicular traffic as well as pedestrian traffic between the residential and the commercial. And kind of as opposed to maybe a typical sort of strip commercial development that's oriented right along and facing the main highway here, the fronts of these particular structures actually go a little more north-south and orient a little more toward these north-south connecting streets and driveways that are integrated into the rest of the project, the residential project. But still, this is not an urban type of city place type of mixed use. It's not that dense. It's not that type of layout. This is definitely a suburban type of mixed use design that's proposed. This is the same design shown on an aerial. Again, north is to the right here, and you can see how this layout integrates into the existing uses that are around it. And essentially, this is an infill development site. It's development on all sides of this. This is the interconnection that I was mentioning earlier that's out there now with the shopping center and by the Olive Garden. There is a connection proposed off of State Road 60, which will be right in, right out. In terms of the transit stop that's proposed and the shelter, that's proposed in this particular area along State Road 60. And, of course, there is a connection also to College Lane here to the south.
Stan, is that going to be a gated connection?
At this point, no. They're not proposing any gates. This would be open. And again, I want to point out, because this question kind of came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission about would people be cutting through this project. Well, it is a bit of the circulation is a bit of a wind through the residential area, although there are sidewalks as well as the streets. But again, this kind of straight shot that's through the existing shopping center here is probably the quickest way to get to any of the existing commercial and probably the proposed commercial if you're coming from the south and coming along College Lane. So we don't think that pattern will change much with this design. And again, in terms of traffic circulation, you can see the three connection points. It would be a right-in, right-out driveway and a right turn lane, eastbound right turn lane improvement with the connection to State Road 60. Just a typical open two-way connection here with the shopping center, and a full movement driveway with a westbound right turn lane on the College Lane entrance that's proposed.
So, Stan, if you can go back. Currently, if you're westbound on 60 and want to get into the Olive Garden or that shopping center,
yes,
you have to go up. Is it 66th Avenue where you make the U-turn and come back?
Yeah, actually you can turn here. There's a left turn bay to get into this driveway for Century Town Center.
Okay.
But you could also go a little bit further. You could turn at the signal at the mall and do the U-turn, which is what people, for instance, going to 60 Oaks do now.
Yeah. So then at that left turn there at the bottom of the screen, they can turn left there
and then come
still
into this
access.
connection.
Okay.
That's correct.
Right. Thank you.
That's exactly right. Dedications, improvements, and conditions that are proposed with this project, again, the transit stop and shelter along State Road 60. There is a sidewalk that's proposed off-site along College Lane frontage. Right now there's a gap over toward the Home Depot that's not filled in now and is one of the public benefits that is proposed with this project. So they'll be not only providing a sidewalk along this project's frontage, but further to the east, filling in some gaps to have a full, at the end of the day, have a full sidewalk connection from this project to 58th Avenue.
What about to the west?
To the west, again, it stops where their project stops. Let me go all the way back here. Here, and at this point, there's no sidewalk proposed along the same, essentially it's the back of 60 Oaks here, or further into the campus of the Mueller Center at this time.
What about a crosswalk there at that intersection? I mean, basically, if we're creating a sidewalk to the east to nowhere, and I'm not trying to put that extra burden on anybody, but I'm thinking more along the lines of getting some economies of scale while they're in there doing that, making a sidewalk go to the Mueller Center.
Sure, and I'll let the applicant address that. Let me tell you what staff focused on. One is, there is an existing sidewalk, crosswalk from the charter school to the sidewalk here along College Lane. What we want to do is fill in the gap all through the commercial area and over to 58th Avenue, where we have an extensive sidewalk system, to try to at least connect, make sure there's a good connection to the existing system there. There's not an existing system right now through the campus. That sure should happen at some point.
Right there. Whose property?
But yeah, right here's where you're talking about going
Yeah, but
to the west.
who's the property
On the other side.
that way? Go
South.
South.
South
Yes.
of College Lane.
now. Yeah, the wooded area.
Right.
Whose is that? Is that the state college?
I believe that is the state college. That's
I don't
correct.
remember that many trees being there.
There are a lot of trees. There's a pretty heavily wooded area between the state college campus itself and the charter school.
Okay.
A couple of other items to note with this proposal. There is a zoning reverter proposed, which is pretty standard with our PD rezonings. 7 years for the project to commence construction, or the zoning reverts to the current, which would be RM8 zoning. Staff is proposing a drive-through restriction on one of the parcels up by 60 Oaks, and I'll get into that in a little more detail in a moment. And there's also a condition dealing with timing of the commercial development. As you all are aware, in our mixed-use policies, of course, we want commercial and residential development to occur in an integrated fashion. We allow for commercial development to move ahead of the residential, but not all of the commercial development, so there is a timing condition. This is the landscape plan proposed. Again, State Road 60 to the right here, 60 Oaks, multifamily development, basically fee simple duplex type of development, heavily wooded along this particular perimeter. And what's proposed here is along next to the commercial site, the westernmost site that's shaded out here in gray, what we're calling a type B plus buffer, 35 feet wide of green area, and all of the planting material for a type A buffer, our most stringent type. Preservation of the existing conservation area, nothing changes there, but then also an added buffer on the outside of that and an opaque feature, so that a 6-foot opaque feature, so that all along this area and along this buffer there's heavy plantings and a 6-foot opaque feature. That should cut down some on noise, on lights and that sort of thing from headlights and so forth from the project itself. And then a type B buffer along this particular stretch as well. Again, pointing out that once you get south of these gray areas here, it's no longer commercial against multifamily. It's multifamily against multifamily. Also wanted to point out on this particular perimeter, there's an existing ditch that's been there for a number of years that straddles the property line between 60 Oaks and this particular project. No changes are proposed to that ditch, and there's a lot of vegetation on both sides of that ditch. That will remain. All the buffering improvements and all the changes in elevation and grading outside of that will be on this project property. All the drainage will go toward and inside of this property, so that ditch will not be used as an outfall for this particular project.
Well, whose ditch is it?
Whose ditch is it? Well, actually, it seems to be on both property lines. It's mostly on the state roads, on the 60 Oaks project, but it does appear that it does come somewhat on this property.
All right, let me go ahead and jump to the obvious question then. If there's a ditch, there's a culvert. If the culvert goes out, what? I know they're going to call their county commissioners and ask them to fix the culvert. So who owns that culvert?
Commissioner Zork, I think, owns that.
Okay,
now.
good job, Commissioner Zork.
Well, I'll let the project engineer talk about the drainage and where the culverts are in particular.
Right.
There's also buffering proposed along the College Lane frontage. And also this project, the residential, essentially this project, buffering itself from the shopping center that's to the east, and that's accommodated with this particular landscape plan, as well as using the proposed stormwater tract and stormwater pond that's in the middle of the residential portion of this project, and doing essentially a pathway and kind of a greenway around that particular feature, and integrating that in with sidewalks that are all along the driveways and building areas here and that connect in to the commercial properties. There's also sidewalks extensively throughout the commercial properties to get between the buildings and parking spaces, and the buildings through parking spaces, and then back to the residential here. So we've taken a pretty thorough look at that.
Go back.
Yes.
The two northernmost units, right where your cursor is, that one and not the commercial, the residential.
Okay.
That one and the one just above it. There doesn't seem to be any buffering from them going north towards the commercial.
Right. What you have is you do have landscape improvements here, and obviously this is the clubhouse here. What you have is a residential project that is in close proximity to commercial, and that's the whole point of integrating these two. What you'll actually have here, you'll have landscaping done on the kind of the residential side of this street here. You'll have landscaping as well on this side of the street, and then within the commercial projects, you'll also have a further landscape improvement here. So there will be really kind of 3 strips of landscaping between the two. But yeah, you're buying into a mixed-use project, and some of these buildings will be. Some people will think it convenient, and other people, if you don't think it's convenience you want, you probably go further back into the project.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question on this same page. The east Type B buffer that faces Century Plaza, don't they have a Type B on the west side of Century Plaza, so we're buffering each other's buffer?
Yes, it actually provides more buffer. No, you're exactly right. When Century Town Center came in, they had to put in buffer against multifamily, and they did. Right. So you're correct. You basically have 2 buffers along this particular side as well, so that gives them, a little more, because there is a lot of exposure, for these units without those buffers next to that parking area. In terms of environmental, there is preservation of the existing conservation easement along the 60 Oaks perimeter with this project. There are no wetlands on the subject site. And there are 2 specimen trees down in sort of the southeast quadrant of this project that will need to be removed. And there are mitigation trees being provided, native trees on site. And that's part of the planting plan that's been proposed. In terms of phasing for the project, the first phase would involve 2 of the 3 commercial projects. All the buffering improvements along the 60 Oaks project, so that buffer gets established up front with the project, and then all of the stormwater pond area and areas around that, and 2 of the residential buildings. Connection to College Lane as well, so that essentially you're getting all the access, the interconnections, and all the buffering on the west side up front. You're getting the interconnection to the Century Town Center up front as well.
Stan, I guess this will be a question for the applicant, but last week we approved a rezoning, and the clubhouse and the recreational amenities were wrapped into phase 1. Did y'all talk to this group about doing the same thing, so when those first people are moved in, that the clubhouse is there for them?
We did not in this particular case, because again it's a mixed use project, and more of the residential is going to come in the next phase, so we did not have it broken down.
Okay.
In terms of phase 2, that is completion of the commercial along State Road 60, the clubhouse, and then the rest of the units, and essentially what happens mostly along the east side and then the south perimeter here of the project. But again, the connecting infrastructure and the buffering already done in the first phase. These are some of the preliminary architectural designs that will be finalized as the project moves forward. These are the residential units. And one thing I did want to point out, all of these are 3-story. There's really good separation distance between the perimeters here. So this kind of building mass is really toward the middle of the project itself, even though it is 3 stories, and we think that's appropriate on this particular site. There will be some foundation plantings as well along the multifamily buildings. And there's some other views of the clubhouse design itself, which faces the commercial parcels. These are some preliminary designs for the middle commercial parcel. And again, this design and the others probably don't show as much of the foundation plantings that will happen. But the idea here is to have some common elements between the residential and the commercial to better visually integrate the project itself, so it doesn't have a typical strip commercial design. I'm showing these last designs. Again, there's still some more work to be done, but there's already some common elements that the architect has introduced into these designs that are consistent with what's being done with the residential. But they're not showing any of the foundation plantings that will be really planted in front of some of these blank wall spaces that are on this side. And the same with the westernmost parcel shown here as a restaurant without a drive-through. Public benefits, again, building the off-site sidewalk to the east to fill in the gap between this site and 58th Avenue and the transit stop and shelter. Those are two public benefits that staff identified. When this went to the Planning and Zoning Commission last month, the P&Z voted 5-1 to recommend that the board approve the project with an additional condition that evidence be presented to the board with respect to project traffic impacts, especially impacts on the 58th Avenue State Road 60 intersection. And what was stated at that meeting was that it just wanted to make sure that the Public Works Director was available, for instance, when this came before you, and the Public Works Director is here this morning, as well as the project traffic engineer, to talk about impacts on that particular intersection. We did put a little bit more information in the item that went to in your packet on the trip distribution and what type of traffic from this project would be going through the intersection. Yeah, I think the primary movement problem at the intersection is northbound on 58th Avenue to turn left and go westbound onto State Road 60. In this particular case, people coming from South County north on 58th Avenue would access this project actually at College Lane, the signal before. So you probably wouldn't have much of that particular movement impacted by this particular project. But again, the Public Works Director and the project traffic engineer are here to answer any questions that you all might have. Staff's recommendation is for approval with a number of conditions. That includes a condition on the architectural elevations being finalized, mitigation trees and landscape improvements that have been described, sidewalks on College Lane, including the off-site sidewalk. And what staff had passed around to you all before the meeting, the one change to our condition 2F that was recently requested by the applicant, and staff has no objection to having that off-site sidewalk in place prior to the first residential CO. So that would still be in the first phase of the development, but before a CO of the first residential building. And staff, again, has no objection to that. That's the only change to the recommendation that's in your packet. Also, there will be conditions relating to the right turn lane improvements on the site's State Road 60 and College Lane entrances, the provision of the transit stop and shelter, zoning reverter, and drive-through location restriction. And again, based on compatibility with this 60 Oaks project to the west, all of the drawings and presentations to date that the residents have seen, staff has seen, is showing up a facility without a drive-through. So to be consistent with that, staff is proposing a drive-through location restriction on that westernmost commercial property. And again, a timing condition that Lot 2, the middle lot, commercial lot, construction not commence until an appropriate amount of residential development has occurred on the site. And that's consistent with the phasing plan that I previously described. With those conditions, staff recommends approval, and I'd be glad to answer questions that you might have.
Commissioner Zork.
I have a couple. On the transit shelter, on College Lane, there's a stop right there at the Charter High School. Is that where that is referring to for the, or is it one out on 60?
Yeah, transit stop will be out on 60.
Okay, and I don't know the
west of their entrance.
Right. Now, but there's one on the south property line at College Lane. That may have a structure in this last batch we just added.
Yeah, I don't believe there's a shelter there.
There's not. I know that, yeah, there's a pad and they've got the crosswalk, but that would not be part of that.
No shelter.
Can you pull a land development permit without having to pull the building permit? Like site clearing, site prep.
Yes.
Start taking retention.
Yes. So they could do infrastructure for the project before proceeding with a building permit for vertical. That's correct.
And then when they apply for the building permit, they have to pay their impact fees at time of issuance or at time of application?
Time of issuance.
Time of issuance. Okay. Which gets me to the third part: is when is the interest charge drop off of the 60 corridor? When that interest carry, I know it's early next year, right? Or
February?
October, it's a year from now.
Oh, okay.
At the very end of September, end of business.
Yeah.
Okay,
last day
so
of September.
that's probably too far out. Try to see if they can do their land development, get some other things done, and not have to pay that additional charge. But that's probably fairly far up. That'll be up to them what they want to do. All right, that's all I have for the moment.
Commissioner
I'm getting
Floyd?
hungry seeing all these restaurants.
Commissioner Fleischer?
Thank you, sir.
I guess it's for the applicant more so than Stan, so I'll wait until.
I have a question for Chris Moore. Stan, if you could leave that up. I kind of see College Lane, taking more and more traffic here. So, Chris, my question is, how are we for right-of-way along College Lane if we need to widen it at some point?
Chris Moore, Public Works Director. We do have additional right-of-way to put in turn lanes. In fact, they're proposing a westbound right turn lane with their project. But as far as additional through lanes, there is some right-of-way to be able to do that. We're nowhere near capacity yet on College, and their project doesn't bring us anywhere close. So, but to answer your question, yes, there is some availability of right-of-way there to add additional through lanes if we needed to.
Okay, and I guess just as we move forward, again with College Lane going all the way, 16th Street all the way out to what, 82nd Avenue?
Or 90th.
Or 90th? Yeah. And I envision that taking some of that traffic off of 60. So just as we go through this, if we can just kind of keep that in mind and not leave ourselves short there.
Right. Well, both 26th and 16th were built with that in mind to act as relievers, if you will, for State Road 60. So they were set up for that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions of staff?
I've got one other one. I think from College Lane at the library has a sidewalk all the way to 66th. I know it goes from 66th east, and I'm thinking it goes to the library past the Richardson Center. You can't really tell on the pictures. That leaves a short segment left that maybe we want to make sure we add to on the MPO sidewalk plan to get that last piece filled, and then you'd have a sidewalk from 58th to 66th. And actually, the sidewalk runs, does that run to 74th too? I'm just thinking of the pedestrian.
I don't think so. Did we put a sidewalk on 16th? No.
Yeah, actually, on the
no, I don't believe we do on 16th. Not out that far west. No.
But 66, though, the sidewalk runs from there. Does it stop at the library entrance to the north on the curve?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay. Because that leaves us a short segment. If we're filling it's nice they're working on filling the east portion of what we can do on our side to fill that couple hundred feet to the west to have a continuous sidewalk because the kids at the campus, well, not all of them, but on all the new buildings on the west and north side of College Lane, could then walk up that way to access the food services that are up that way.
Yep. We've had complaints within the past year about kids, pedestrians, school kids coming towards the commercial area from west on College. And that was one of the reasons why we put the crosswalk and connector in front of the Charter High School.
Right.
That was to kind of concentrate and focus them in one area so and we put the warning signs in so traffic could be aware of that. And this development is connecting with that and then taking the sidewalk east to 58th, so that will work there.
Is there anyone from State Road 60 Vero LLC that would like to make a presentation?
Can't resist.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Keep in mind, he didn't get sworn in.
He told us lawyers don't need to be sworn in, apparently.
I took my oath in 1979. So.
Wow.
I really don't have anything to add. Staff did a great job with the presentation. They covered everything. The project it's kind of sad for me because it's kind of been a career piece of property. I've been working on it for 15 years or so. I don't know if you said you had some questions, Commissioner Davis.
Did you want us to vote it down just so you can keep working on it?
Yeah, I don't know if my client would be real happy, but I mean it is true that we finally got a project the project satisfies the comprehensive plan. It satisfies the evolving mixed-use PD ordinance, and it's a viable way to develop this piece of property. It's going to be a really I think it's a critical link on the State Road 60 corridor. It's going to look good, and it's going to be well used by the public and by the people who live behind it. Right. You know, the 159 residents.
Commissioner,
yeah, not
Davis,
that it matters or anything, but just so I can answer the question, if somebody were to ask, is this going to be fee simple ownership, or do you envision it being an apartment complex?
No, right now it's envisioned as being apartment complexes.
Okay.
Yes, and I did want to add one. I have a mild objection to one of the staff recommendations. We don't agree with the condition that the westernmost parcel, which is the largest parcel, not be permitted to have a drive-through restaurant on it. It doesn't seem to be consistent with the ordinance, because the drive-through facility itself, the drive-through window, cannot be adjacent to the residential unit. So the drive-through would be on the east. Any drive-through and facility, the window, would not be facing the 60 Oaks project. And the driving aisles cannot surround the building. So there wouldn't even be a drive aisle on the west side of the building. So we don't agree with that condition, not willing to sacrifice the project to fight it, but we don't think it's a necessary condition. And we think that we should be permitted to bring a site plan forward if that's what the tenant on that property wants, that would satisfy the ordinance and permit a drive-through restaurant on the west side of the westernmost lot. But other than that, the staff has had more input on this project than they normally would, because it's an MXPD, PD, MXD. I mean, they've had it's a PD, so they get a lot of input. They've been great to work with, and we support the staff recommendation other than that one condition. Thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, at this point, we'll open up to the general public. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment or speak on the proposed project? Yes, sir. Please come up. If we could have your name and address, please, and welcome.
Yes, sir. My name is Mark Dugan. I live in 60 Oaks on the adjacent property, and I'd like to thank the Commission for taking this under consideration. Again, the staff has been very helpful. I attended the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting back on September 11th and found it to be very helpful. Mr. Sam Zimmerman was the one dissenting vote who, again, questioned the landowners and the lawyer and the developers on this, because when this was established by the county back in the 80s, it was the progression. It was commercial, multifamily, then like the duplex thing, then it was going to be residential. And by bringing commercial in, we've kind of changed that. When I bought my place in 60 Oaks 11 years ago, that's what my understanding was, that was going to be a multifamily area in that. And I understand times change, and I understand how valuable that property is on Route 60 for commercial type of businesses. That's the one thing. I talked to Mr. Bowling. He's been very helpful and very informative on some of the concerns that I've had he has assured me that they've been placed in the restrictions of what has to be done before that the CO is issued to this land developer. Such things as lighting and things like that, and the drainage. I know that they have their site engineer here, and you've already addressed it today. One of the main things, and I understand with the traffic study at this time, that they're saying there's not going to be that much of an impact on it. I think everyone sitting in this room realizes that 58th and Route 60 corridor is a bear. I mean, it's one of the, we understood from the planning and zoning that corridor, that intersection has an F rating as far as traffic and everything else. I also think that looking at that corridor in February is a little different than looking at it now. I mean, as a resident of that area, we do see a very big increase when it gets to be when our friends from up north come down here and visit. So that's the other one. I talked to Mr. Bowling about the left-hand turn off of that going into Lowe's or anything, and he kind of agreed with me that whole Route 60 corridor has that problem. If you're going to turn heading east on Route 60 and you're going to go into Lowe's or Office Depot, you have to wait till the traffic clears before you can make that turn, because the way that's set up, it blocks off any view and you don't know when you're safe to do that. College Lane is not a big road, and you guys already discussed that. I mean, and with the charter school as popular as it is, and Indian River State College is going to do nothing but grow out there, and we all know that. And it's nice to have institution like that out in our county on the west side. So I fear for that type of thing coming in. Like I said, most of the concerns of the 60 Oaks people is the noise, the traffic going in there, and what can happen. Mr. Barquette just mentioned about the drive-through. I don't think anyone wants their house backing up to a drive-through, and whether it's on the east side or the west side or anything, you got to get there one way or another, and I see that as being a situation. But like I said, being invited, getting the notices has been very helpful. Attending that your zoning commission, planning and zoning. Again, it's nice to have citizens up there, looking out for everybody that's there, and for you guys to take this under consideration today. I sure do appreciate everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Anyone else from the public that would wish to speak on this project? Okay. Stan, any final discussion? Okay. Bruce, any final comment from State Road 60 Vero? The clerk did get a copy of the updated staff recommendation. Okay, so all that's taken care of. So with that, we'll close the public hearing. Gentlemen, your recommendations.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve with the conditions that we have here in 10A2 and go ahead and make it so they can't have the drive-through on the east or west side.
Okay, so as staff has presented.
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Solari to adopt staff recommendation with the updated recommendations as was presented to us this morning. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify with aye. Aye. Is there any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Stan. Bruce, thank you all very much. Mr. Reingold, if you'd do the honors of the public notice item, please.
Absolutely. To the chair and to the commission, those remaining in the audience and those watching at home, we have a notice of scheduled public hearing for October 21st, 2014. This is to consider adoption of a proposed ordinance amending the Indian River County Code with respect to medical marijuana. Memorandum dated October 6, 2014. Again, that public hearing will be held on October 21st, 2014. With that, I turn it back over to the chair.
And that would be a public hearing to not put pot in our Constitution. Is that?
Very, very well said.
Couldn't resist that.
Read his digest again.
That takes that we already completed the public discussion items, and so now no county administrator matters, no departmental matters. That takes us now to the county attorney matters, the Community Development Block Grant Citizen Advisory Task Force, memorandum dated October 7, 2014. Mr. Reingold.
Thank you very much. Essentially what we have today is staff brought to my attention at the time that DEO is considering rule changes concerning the Community Development Block Grant Program. Right now we have a Citizen Advisory Task Force. It's been in place for many years. However, under the new rules, there's going to be some changes made to the system in which we could get 10 additional points in our community block grant applications if we have a CTF that is at least 5 members, and 2, has 51% of its makeup being from low or moderate income households. Staff did an analysis of the current Citizen Advisory Task Force and found that we have an 11-member board, but we don't meet the 51% requirement. In analyzing this, they came to me and said, well, what can we do to change the committee? And we quickly looked at it and realized, well, you've got 11 members now, 4 of whom of the members are vacant, so that drops you to 7. Community Development Director sits on the board, so we figure maybe we can eliminate the Community Development Director from it. That brings us to 6. And then we actually reached out to one of our members who had missed a couple meetings and was willing to step down. And by that point, we were able to restructure the committee to 5 members, and it was a 5-member board that did meet the 51% requirement, and therefore we brought to you this resolution and the list of members to be approved for your consideration today. So thus, County Attorney's Office recommends that you approve the resolution and the list of 5 members to be on the Citizen Advisory Task Force.
Is there questions of Dylan? Dylan, the 5 members listed here, I think, or 4 of them, are they residents of Gifford, and then Mr. Wiggins is down in the Oslo area? Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge, certainly Joe Idolette. I know Mr. Mosley, or Reverend Mosley, has his Gifford Economic Organization in Gifford. Teddy Floyd. I don't know Leroy Smith, and I know Joe Wiggins. You're right, is on the south part of the county, but I don't know the residency of Mr. Mosley or Mr. Smith.
In any CDBG grant that we apply for goes through the Citizens Advisory Committee?
That is correct.
I guess my only concern is, that I don't know if it's just confusion or what, but in the last year we've heard a lot of complaints from some of the Gifford residents that we're using them to get these grants that the money is spent somewhere else. And I don't want that to be looked at as we're not trying to do improvements in Gifford, but I guess I'm just trying to make sure it's clear that this is something we have to do, but it doesn't necessarily mean we're not paying attention to Gifford. I guess it just seems a little. I don't know. I understand we have to do it, but in particular with an economic development CDBG grant, excuse me, because that might be coming up here relatively in the next 12 months. And I guess I just want to make sure, do these members understand that they're an advisory committee for the entire county and not just where they live?
We can certainly make that clear to the membership.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's countywide. So, all right, gentlemen. Any other questions of Dylan? Is there any action on this matter?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Zork to approve the county attorney's recommendation. All in favor of the motion signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries 5-0. That takes us to commission matters. We did add to the agenda under my matters a discussion on setting a date for the vote on Commissioner Slary's motion on the Oslo boat ramp. At that meeting, the discussion centered on whether we would bring this back at the regularly scheduled meeting on October 21st, which would be 1 week from now, or if there would be a need to set a special call meeting. And I believe most of this was driven by Commissioner Zork and Commissioner Flesher that expressed an interest in wanting a little bit more time to do some more background work. Commissioner Flesher, if I could ask you, or have you completed your work, or what would, where are you on the time frame?
My due diligence as committed to the public in reviewing the attorney's information and specifically what was brought up during the meeting, as well as a site review and tour of the facility with the doctors is complete at this time, and I will need no additional time for review.
Okay, so we could bring this back on October 21st, and you're satisfied with your additional research?
Yes, I am.
Commissioner Zork, how are you?
I'll be completed by then.
Okay, all right. Well, gentlemen, I can't vote, but I'd recommend we schedule it for the...
Move for the regular meeting.
Second.
The meeting of October 21st. That's a motion by Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. I guess what Joe or Dylan will just put this under Public Works. Then I guess would that be the most appropriate? Or Commissioner Sawyer, if you'd like it under your matters,
it doesn't need to be. I'm happy to put it under my matters, but happy.
I say we just have it. It's a public works issue.
Yeah,
I mean,
that would kind of be my recommendation.
Yeah.
All right. So Commissioner Flesher, we'll just put that under Public Works. Is that good with your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right. So we have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, second from Commissioner Davis to conclude the Oslo ramp. Motion from Commissioner Sari under public Works items on the October 21st regularly scheduled meeting. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? All right, that carries 5-0. And now we have Commissioner Solari with a reauthorization of the Florida Enterprise Zone Program, memorandum dated October 7, 2014. Commissioner Solari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm the liaison to the Enterprise Zone Committee, and that committee wanted to have this resolution supporting the reauthorization of the Florida Enterprise Zone Program get the Commission's approval. Helene Katstein's here. If you'd like further discussion on it.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Slurry, motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Slurry to approve the attached resolution. Helene, did you want to comment on this?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Helene Castletine, Economic Development Director with the Indian River County Chamber of Commerce. I also serve as the Enterprise Zone Coordinator. I just wanted to let you all know that an identical resolution was sent to the Vero Beach City Council last week for their consideration. They'll be bringing that forward at their next meeting next Tuesday, October 21st, at their 6 p.m. meeting. So once these are approved and signed, what we're encouraging you and the Vero Beach City Council to do is then send that on to the Governor, the Senate President, and the Speaker of the House, and then once all the committees are formed after the election, to send it on to those committee chairs as well.
Okay, I think we can do that. Commissioner Zork.
Question, is this a similar resolution that I know you've got kind of a group of enterprise zone folks around the state. Are they all moving kind of a similar resolution with the other ones so that it's obviously not just us but others kind of
Correct.
Doing a similar effort?
Correct. I actually got the text that I sent to you all. I got that from Miami-Dade Council. Okay. And then I sent a copy of what I sent to you to Enterprise Florida, to the Florida Economic Development Council and the Florida Chamber so they can share it with their constituents. We are all working together, the Enterprise Zone coordinators, the local economic development organizations, in moving this forward and hopefully to get this program continued. The talk is that it probably will be changed. It won't look the same as it does today. There will probably be some significant changes made, in fact. And what we're hearing, too, is that some of the enterprise zones may be eliminated.
Right, there's some that are just sitting there sort of dormant.
Right.
Right, they're not really utilizing them as they should, and if they're not, then
correct.
We'll take their acreage or their miles. Right.
The opportunities.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Helene. Motion by Commissioner Davis, second by Commissioner Slurry. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Is any opposed? That motion passes 5-0. We now sit as the Environmental Control Board. Approval of the minutes of July 15, 2014.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the approval of the minutes of the meeting of July 15th, as well as move to accept the report of activities for the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, and the fourth quarter of 2014.
Wow.
And I'll be glad to second that. So we have
a year's worth of stuff.
We have a motion by Commissioner Slurry, second by myself, to approve the minutes and the activities report. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Gentlemen, that concludes the agenda. And with that, just, Joe, I'm sure we have a lot of people on the Oslo ramp. If we could just make sure that we send an email or just publicize it that the vote will be on October 21st. Just okay, that'll be good. Any other business to conduct today, gentlemen? With that, we stand adjourned.